The stagecoach was 11 days late. Elias Vorn didn't bother checking his pocket watch anymore. Time moved different up here in the Montana high country, measured not in hours but in storms survived, firewood split, and winters endured. He stood on the weathered porch of his trading post, squinting against the late September wind that came screaming down from the peaks like it had personal grievances. He'd stopped expecting the coach 3 days ago. Stopped expecting much of anything, really. The settlement, if you could call 4 buildings and a stable a settlement, clung to the mountainside like a bad idea that refused to die. Vorn's outpost, they called it, though Elias had never asked for the naming rights. It was just the only place for 60 miles where you could trade furs, buy ammunition, or wait out a blizzard without freezing to death. Probably. He was about to head back inside when he heard it, the distant rattle of wheels on stone, the labored breathing of horses pushed too hard for too long. The stagecoach lurched into view like a drunk trying to find his door. The driver looked half dead, ice crusted in his beard, and the 2 horses were trembling so hard Elias could see it from 50 feet away. "Vorn," the driver's voice came out as gravel. "Got a passenger, and a problem." "I don't take passengers." "Yeah, well, she paid triple fare and I ain't hauling her back down in this weather." The driver spat brown into the snow. "She's your problem now." The coach door opened. She wasn't what he expected. Nobody ever was, but especially not her. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair pinned back, severe enough to make a point. Dressed in widow's black, but the fabric was quality. Not new, but well kept. Her face was the kind that didn't give anything away, all clean lines and careful stillness. She stepped down onto the frozen ground with the kind of precision that made Elias think of a chess player considering her next move. Their eyes met. Hers were gray, not the warm gray of morning fog, but the cold gray of gunmetal. She didn't smile. He appreciated that. "Mr. Vorn?" Her voice matched her eyes. Controlled, giving away nothing. "Just Vorn." "I was told you might have a room. I can pay." "Wasn't told I was running a boarding house." "You're not?" She pulled a leather purse from her bag, counted out bills without looking down. Her fingers moved with the efficiency of someone who'd handled money in quantities that mattered. "I'm told you trade in furs. I can keep accounts, manage inventory, handle correspondence with buyers down in Helena. 3 months' work for room and board, plus this." She laid the bills on the porch railing. As a gesture of good faith. Elias stared at the money. More than he'd see in half a year of trading. "Don't need help." "Yes, you do." She said it like a fact, not an argument. "Your last ledger entry with Morrison Trading Company was 6 weeks ago. You're losing contracts because you can't keep up with the paperwork. I can fix that." The wind picked up, throwing ice crystals hard enough to sting. The driver cleared his throat. "Vorn, I gotta get these horses inside or I'm losing them. You taking her or not?" Elias looked at the woman again. There was something wrong here. Something off. Women who could do bookkeeping and spoke like they'd been educated didn't end up at altitude outposts in Montana territory. They didn't pay triple fare to reach nowhere. They especially didn't carry themselves like they were ready for a fight they hadn't picked yet. He should say no. Every instinct he'd honed in 43 years of survival was screaming at him to send her back down the mountain. 3 months, he heard himself say. "You keep my business straight. I give you room and board. But I got one rule and it ain't negotiable." Which is? No past. No questions. You don't ask about mine. I don't ask about yours. You got ghosts following you. They stay outside my door. Something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe, or recognition. Agreed. "What do I call you?" "Mara Dellin." "That your real name?" She smiled for the first time. It didn't reach her eyes. "You just said no questions about the past." "Fair enough." "Stable's out back. You can take the room above the storage. It's got a stove and a bed. Nothing else." "That's all I need." The driver had already started unloading her trunk. Just one. Elias noted that. People running usually traveled light, but they traveled messy. Random bags, stuff grabbed in a hurry. Her single trunk suggested planning, preparation. He grabbed the other handle without asking, and together they hauled it through the trading post. The main room smelled like wood smoke, gun oil, and the ghost of 1,000 animal pelts. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with ammunition, basic dry goods, tools, traps. A counter ran along the back, and behind it, his living quarters. Just a bed, a table, and a stove that had seen better decades. The stairs to the upper room were narrow and steep. Mara climbed them ahead of him, and he noticed she moved like someone who'd learned not to make noise. Her boots barely sounded on the wood. The room was exactly what he'd promised. 4 walls, a window that looked out over the valley, a potbelly stove, and a bed frame with a thin mattress. Cold as hell. He set the trunk down. Firewood's downstairs, water pumps out back, but it'll freeze solid by November. After that, you melt snow. Privy's 30 feet east. You'll want to memorize the path before the first real storm. Trading post opens at dawn, closes at dark. You eat what I eat, when I eat. Understood. Supplies come up once a month if the weather holds. Sometimes they don't hold. You learn to make do. She looked around the room without expression, then back at him. Thank you. It wasn't gratitude. It was closure. End of conversation. Elias headed for the stairs, then stopped. Mrs. Dellin. Miss? He turned. She was already unpacking, her movements economical and precise. You running from something specific or just running? She didn't look up from the trunk. I thought we agreed. No past, no questions. Yeah, we did. He left her to it. Downstairs, the driver had already collected his pay and was seeing to the horses. Elias poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and stood at the window, watching the light fail over the peaks. He'd made a mistake. He knew it bone deep. But winter was coming hard. He could feel it in the air, taste it in the wind. The kind of winter that killed the unprepared and tested everyone else. And if he was being honest with himself, which he tried to avoid, the loneliness had started eating at him around the edges. Not loneliness for company. He'd trained himself out of that years ago. But the loneliness of purpose, of waking up and working and sleeping and waking up again with nothing connecting the days except survival. Maybe she could keep the books. Maybe having someone else around would make the silence less heavy. Or maybe she'd bring whatever she was running from right to his door, and he'd regret this before the first snow fell. He finished the whiskey. Outside, the wind was already picking up. The temperature would drop 20 degrees by midnight. First frost would come any day now. Elias banked the fire, checked the locks out of habit, and went to bed in his clothes. Up here you learn to sleep ready. Ready for weather, ready for trouble, ready for the mountain to remind you that it didn't care about your plans. Morning came gray and cold. Elias woke to the smell of coffee, which was wrong because he hadn't made any. He pulled on his boots and found Mara already at the stove, 2 cups poured. Beans are in the jar by the window, he said. Help yourself. Already did. I also inventoried your dry goods. You're low on flour, salt, and coffee. Your ammunition stock is good, but you're carrying 3 calibers that nobody's used in a decade. I can return them to Morrison for credit if you want. It was barely dawn and she was already working. Elias took the coffee she offered. It was strong enough to strip paint. You sleep at all? Enough. She pulled a ledger from the shelf behind the counter, opened it to a page dense with his cramped handwriting. Your bookkeeping is terrible. Gets the job done. Barely. You've been undercharging Morrison by 8% for the past 4 months because you're calculating transport costs wrong. And you missed 2 payments from a trapper named Rollins. He owes you $47. Elias blinked. He'd forgotten about Rollins entirely. You figured that out in one night? I have experience with accounting. She said it in a way that closed the door on follow-up questions. If you want me to fix this, I'll need access to all your correspondence and contracts. And I'll need to know which trappers are reliable and which ones you're about to cut loose. How do you know I'm about to cut anyone loose? She tapped a page in the ledger. You've stopped extending credit to 3 names. That's not random. You've made a decision about them. She was right. One was a drunk who'd started missing delivery dates. One had brought in furs that were poorly processed, damn near worthless. The third had tried to shortchange him twice. You're sharp. I'm useful. There's a difference. Fair point. They worked in silence after that. Elias handled the morning routine, checking the stock, splitting firewood, making sure the stable was secure. Mara took over the desk, spreading out paperwork with the focus of a general planning a campaign. Around mid-morning, a trapper named Keller showed up with a week's worth of pelts. He was a big man, loud, the kind who filled a room by existing in it. "Vorn, heard you got yourself a woman up here. Didn't believe it." Elias didn't look up from the furs he was inspecting. "She's handling accounts. Not here for conversation." Keller grinned, showing teeth that had seen better years. "Still counts. Gets lonely up here, don't it? Man's got needs." "Keller." Elias's voice dropped 10 degrees. "You got pelts to sell, or you wasting my time?" The trapper's grin faded. Yeah, I got pelts." They negotiated in the way men did when words cost effort. Short, direct, no bullshit. Keller took his pay and left, but not before throwing one more look at Mara. She hadn't even glanced up. After the door closed, Elias said, "You're going to get comments. Men up here, they see a woman. They think it means something. Let them think." Her pen kept moving across the ledger. "As long as they pay what they owe, I don't care what they think. Some of them won't leave it at thinking." Now she did look up. "Then you'll make it clear. Won't you?" It wasn't a question. It was a challenge. Elias almost smiled. Almost. "Yeah, I will." The days settled into a rhythm that surprised him with how easily it formed. Mara worked like someone who'd been waiting for purpose. She reorganized the entire inventory system, color-coding ammunition by caliber, separating the pelts by quality and type. She rewrote his contracts with Morrison Trading Company in language that was airtight and favorable. She even started a system for tracking which trappers were most reliable, noting their patterns and preferences. She didn't talk much. Neither did he. But the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people who'd both learned that words could be weapons and quiet was safer. They ate together, simple food made from what was available. Beans, salted meat, bread when they had flour. She cooked sometimes. So did he. They didn't discuss it, just took turns. 3 weeks in, the first snow fell. Not the killing snow, just a warning shot. 6 inches overnight, gone by afternoon. But it was a reminder that the clock was ticking. Elias spent the day reinforcing the stable, checking for gaps in the walls, making sure the roof could handle weight. When he came back inside near dusk, Mara had stew waiting. They ate without talking. Then she said, "How bad does it get, the winter?" "Bad." Specifics. He set down his spoon. 3 years ago, we got 20 feet of snow between November and March. Couldn't leave the building for 2 weeks straight. Lost half my stock because the roof caved on the storage shed. Year before that, temperature dropped so low the nails started popping out of the walls. Had to burn half my furniture just to stay alive. And last year? Last year was mild, which means this year won't be. She nodded slowly. "What do you need me to do?" "We need more firewood, a lot more. And we need to get the supply run before the pass closes. Morrison won't risk the route after mid-October. When's the next run scheduled?" "Week from tomorrow. If they come at all." "They'll come." She said it with certainty. "I sent them a letter with the corrected contracts. They'll want to negotiate in person." Elias frowned. "Sent a letter? When?" "Last week, with the mail coach." "I didn't authorize that." "You hired me to handle accounts. This is handling accounts." Her voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. "We were leaving money on the table. I fixed it." He should have been angry. Should have reminded her that this was his business, his decisions. But the truth was, she was right. And he was too damn tired of doing everything alone to fight about it. "What'd you ask for?" 12% increase on fur prices, plus guaranteed monthly runs through March regardless of weather. In exchange, we commit to exclusive supply for 2 years. They'll never agree to guaranteed runs through winter. They will if they want exclusive access to your trappers. You've got the best network within 100 miles. They know it. Elias leaned back in his chair. "You're gambling." "No, I'm negotiating from strength. There's a difference." The stew was getting cold. He picked up his spoon again. "You do this before?" "The negotiating." "I've done a lot of things before." And that was all she'd give him. He was learning her tells, the way her shoulders set when a topic was closed. the way her hand stilled when she was deciding how much to reveal. He let it drop. The Morrison supply run came on schedule, led by a man named Garrett, who had a reputation for being careful with money and careless with whiskey. Mara met him at the counter. "Miss Dellin, I presume?" Garrett had the look of a man who did business in city offices and found the frontier distasteful. "Your letter was quite assertive." "It was accurate." "That's debatable. 12% is below market rate for exclusive access to prime trapping territory, and you know it. Hollis Post is offering 15% for non-exclusive contracts in the Helena Valley." Garrett's expression tightened. "Hollis Post can't guarantee quality. Neither can you if you're still accepting pelts from trappers who are processing them wrong. I've included a list of minimum quality standards. Vaughn's suppliers all meet them. Can you say the same about your other sources?" Elias watched from across the room, pretending to inspect traps. He'd never seen someone negotiate like this. Calm, precise, treating every objection like a problem to solve rather than a fight to win. Garrett tried 3 more angles. She dismantled all of them. They settled on 10% increase, guaranteed runs through February, and a revised quality standard that would cut out Morrison's worst suppliers. After Garrett left, Elias said, "You just made me more money in an hour than I made all last year." "Yes." "Where'd you learn that?" She was already organizing the new supplies. "I told you, I've done a lot of things." "That's not an answer." She stopped, hands resting on a crate of ammunition. "You want me to leave?" "What? No, I'm just—" "Then it's the only answer you're getting." She wasn't angry, wasn't defensive, just final. Elias nodded slowly. Fair enough. But he wondered, and the wondering stayed with him. Nut. October came in cold and stayed that way. The trappers who worked the high country started coming down, bringing their catches, trading for supplies, preparing for the long isolation. Mara handled most of the transactions now, and Elias noticed how the men adjusted to her presence. Some tried charm. She ignored it. Some tried intimidation. She stared them down. One tried to shortchange her on account. She caught it instantly and banned him from trading for the rest of the season. Word got around. The woman at Vaughn's outpost wasn't soft, wasn't stupid, and wasn't interested. Elias found he liked that, liked not having to defend or explain or manage. She held her own ground, and that was that. But there were moments when he caught something else, small things. The way she froze when a man raised his voice in frustration. The way her hand moved to her coat pocket when someone got too close, not reaching for anything, just checking that the pocket was there. The way she positioned herself near exits, always aware of the door. She'd been hurt, or threatened, or both. He didn't ask. The rule was no past, no questions. But he paid attention. Late October, a storm blew in that lasted 3 days. They were trapped inside, watching the world turn white beyond the windows. The temperature dropped so low that frost formed on the inside of the glass. They worked by lamplight, speaking only when necessary. Mara went through old contracts, finding errors, recovering lost money. Elias repaired equipment, checked inventory, made lists of what they'd need when the next supply run came. If it came. On the 3rd day, the wind finally died. Elias opened the door to find snow drifted 5 feet high against the porch. It took him 2 hours to dig a path to the stable. When he came back inside, shaking with cold, Mara had hot coffee and food waiting. He sat down heavily. "Thanks." She nodded. They ate in silence. Then she said, "How often does that happen? Storms like that?" "Often enough." "And you've done this alone, every year. Didn't have a choice." She looked at him then, really looked, like she was trying to figure something out. "Everyone has a choice. Not if you want to survive." "Surviving isn't the same as living." Elias met her eyes. "You sound like you know the difference." "I do." "Which one are you doing? Up here?" She was quiet for a long moment, then, "I'm not sure yet." It was the most honest thing she'd said since arriving. November brought the first real snow. Not 5 feet. 15. It came down for 6 days straight, and when it finally stopped, the world had been remade. The trading post was an island in a wide ocean. The trails were gone. The landmarks were buried. They were sealed in. Elias had prepared for this. He'd lived this, but having Mara there changed it in ways he hadn't anticipated. She wasn't helpless. She pulled her weight, helped dig out the stable, rationed supplies with brutal efficiency, kept the stove running on the minimum fuel necessary. But she was also present. And presence, he was learning, took up space in ways that had nothing to do with bodies. She hung laundry near the stove to dry. The scent of soap filled the room. She hummed sometimes while she worked. Not loudly, just background noise. She asked him questions about the territory, the trappers, the mountain. Not prying questions, practical ones. And slowly, without him meaning to let it happen, the silence between them started to feel less like protection and more like companionship. It was mid-November when the fight came. Not with her. With a trapper named Dawes. He showed up half frozen, demanding shelter and refusing to pay. Said he'd lost his furs in a river crossing and didn't have money. Elias would have given him the shelter anyway, but Dawes was drunk and angry, and when Mara asked him to wait outside while she prepared a space, he grabbed her arm. Don't take orders from a woman. Elias had the man by the collar and halfway to the door before conscious thought caught up. You touch her again, you won't make it down the mountain. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. Dawes tried to bluster. Hell, Vorn, I didn't mean... Get out. It's 15 below out there. Should have thought of that before you put hands on what's mine. The words came out before he could stop them. Mara went very still. Dawes saw his chance. Left. Fast. Elias turned to find Mara staring at him. I didn't mean... He stopped. You work for me. I'm responsible for... I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting sometimes. Not me. Yeah? He could hear the edge in his own voice now, the anger bleeding through. Then why are you here? Why'd you pay triple fare to reach the middle of nowhere and take a job you're overqualified for? You telling me you don't need protection from whatever you're running from? Her face went blank, completely blank. I should go. You can't. We're snowed in. Then I'll stay in my room. She was up the stairs before he could say anything else. Elias stood alone in the trading post, breathing hard, cursing himself. He'd broken the rule, asked about her past, pushed when he'd promised not to. And worse, he'd meant what he said to Dawes. The possessiveness in those words wasn't about responsibility or employment. It was something else, something he'd buried so deep he'd thought it was gone. Upstairs, he heard the faint sound of her moving around. Pacing, maybe. He should apologize. Should go up there and... No. She'd asked for space. He'd give it to her. He poured himself whiskey, drank it, poured another. The wind picked up outside, rattling the windows. It was going to be a long night. She didn't come down the next morning, or the morning after that. Elias left food at the bottom of the stairs. It disappeared, so he knew she was eating, but she didn't show herself. On the third day, guilt gave way to frustration. They were trapped in this place together. They couldn't just avoid each other for the next 4 months. He climbed the stairs, knocked. Mara. Silence. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. That was wrong. More silence. I'm leaving food and coffee. You need anything else? You let me know. He waited. Nothing. Back downstairs, he threw himself into work. Repaired everything that didn't need repairing. Organized things that were already organized. Tried not to think about the fact that he missed her presence. Missed her. Hell. On the 4th day, she came down. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping. I need to apologize too, she said without preamble. You were protecting me. I reacted badly. You don't have to... Let me finish. She crossed to the stove, poured coffee with shaking hands. I'm not used to people caring whether I'm safe. I forgot what it feels like. And when it happened, I panicked. Mara... I was married once. The words came out fast, like she had to say them before she lost nerve. He was a good man, for a while. Then he wasn't. And when I finally left, I made sure I'd never need anyone's protection again. That's what I've been running from. Not him. He's dead. But the person I was when I was with him. The person who needed someone else to feel whole. Elias set down his cup carefully. You don't seem like that person now. No, I'm not. She finally looked at him. But sometimes the fear still lives in my bones. And when Dawes grabbed me and you stepped in, it brought everything back. Not the fear of being hurt, the fear of needing to be saved. You don't need saving. I know, but you gave it anyway, and I didn't know what to do with that. They stood there, separated by 10 feet of floor and 1,000 things unsaid. I meant what I said, Elias heard himself say, about you being mine to protect. But not because you're weak, or because I own you. Because you're here, and I give a damn whether you live or die. That's all it was. That's not all it was. No, it wasn't. We should get back to work, he said instead. She nodded. Yeah, we should. But something had shifted. Some wall had come down, or at least developed a crack. And as November bled into December, as the snow piled higher and the night stretched longer, they began to exist in the same space differently. Not quite together, but not quite alone anymore either. The first real test came 2 weeks before Christmas. Elias had gone out to check the trap lines on the near ridge. A stupid decision, but supplies were running low, and he needed to know if any of the trappers had left catches before heading down for winter. He told Mara he'd be back by dark. Dark came. He didn't. Mara waited an hour, then 2. The temperature was dropping fast and the wind had teeth. She knew what she should do. Stay inside, stay safe. He was experienced. He knew the mountain. He'd be fine. But the fear in her chest said otherwise. She dressed in layers, took the rifle from behind the counter, left a lamp burning in the window, and went after him. The cold hit like a fist. The wind was worse. It drove ice crystals straight through her coat, her skin, into her bones. She followed the trail as long as there was one. Then she followed instinct. He'd said the near ridge, east-facing, maybe a mile out. She pushed through snow that was waist-deep in places, using the rifle as a walking stick. Her legs screamed, her lungs burned. The dark was absolute except for the snow's faint glow. She almost missed him. Just a dark shape in the white. Collapsed near a rock slide, leg bent wrong, not moving. Elias! She dropped beside him. His face was gray, ice in his beard and his hair, breathing shallow. Elias, can you hear me? His eyes opened, unfocused. Mara? His voice was barely there. You shouldn't be out here. Shut up. Where are you hurt? Leg? Fell? Can't walk. She could see it now. His right leg trapped under a boulder that must have come down in the slide. The angle was wrong, badly wrong. She had to move the rock, had to get him out, had to get him back before the cold killed them both. She braced her back against the boulder, planted her feet, and pushed. It didn't move. She pushed harder. Nothing. Mara, leave me. Get back. No. She found a branch, wedged it under the rock, used it as a lever. The rock shifted, inch by inch, enough to pull him free. His scream cut through the wind. Then silence. He'd passed out. Probably better. She got his arm over her shoulder, hauled him up. He was dead weight. All muscle and bone and height she didn't have. The trip back was a nightmare. She half carried, half dragged him through snow that fought every step. Her muscles gave up. She kept moving anyway. Her lungs stopped working right. She kept moving. The lamp in the window was a star, the only star. She aimed for it and didn't let herself think about the distance. When they finally crashed through the door, she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. But they were inside. They were alive. She got the stove roaring, got his wet clothes off. His leg was a mess. Broken for sure, maybe worse. She'd need to set it, splint it, hope to hell it was clean. She'd done this before, long time ago. Different life. Her hands remembered. She found whiskey, poured it down his throat until he woke up enough to scream again. Then she set the bone. It took 3 tries. When it was done, when the splint was tight and the bleeding had stopped, she collapsed beside him on the floor. Her hands were still shaking, would probably shake for days. But he was breathing, heart beating, alive. She'd saved him. Or maybe they'd saved each other. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the stove burned. And Mara Dellin, who'd sworn she'd never need anyone again, who'd run to this godforsaken mountain to prove she could survive alone, sat on the floor next to a man she barely knew and realized. She'd been lying to herself. She needed this, needed him, needed to matter to someone again. The truth of it should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like finally breathing after holding her breath for years. Elias's eyes opened, focused on her. "You came after me," he whispered. "Yeah." "Why?" She could have lied, could have said it was obligation or practicality or simple human decency. But she was done lying, to him, to herself. "Because I couldn't lose you." His hand found hers, held on. Neither of them said anything else. They didn't need to. The mountain raged outside. Inside, something had changed, something that would be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. But for now, for this moment, they were alive. They were together, and that was enough. The fever came on the second day. Mara woke to find Elias thrashing on the makeshift bed she'd dragged near the stove, his skin burning hot despite the blankets piled on top of him. His leg was swollen tight against the splint, angry red spreading from the break site. Infection. Of course it was infection. She'd cleaned the wound as best she could, poured whiskey over everything, wrapped it tight. But out here, best wasn't always good enough. The mountain didn't grade on effort. "No, no, no, no." Elias's voice was thick, lost in whatever nightmare the fever had dragged him into. "Sarah, get back! Get the kids back!" Sarah. Kids. Mara pressed a cold cloth to his forehead, her stomach twisting. He'd said no past, no questions, but the past was spilling out of him now whether he wanted it to or not. "Elias, you're safe. You're at the outpost." His eyes opened but didn't see her. "The fire's spreading. I can't get to them. There's no fire. You're okay." I tried to get them out." His hand grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "Tell them I tried." Her throat closed. She'd wondered what had carved the hollowness into him, what had turned a man into a ghost living alone on a mountain. Now she knew, or knew enough. He'd lost people, lost them in a way that made him blame himself. She worked through the day in grim silence, changing the cloth on his forehead every hour, trying to get water and willow bark tea down his throat. The infection was winning. His temperature climbed higher, the red spread further up his leg. By nightfall, she was seriously considering amputation. She had a saw, had enough medical knowledge from the years she didn't talk about. Could probably do it without killing him from shock or blood loss. Probably. But if she was wrong, if the infection had already spread too far into his blood, cutting off the leg would just make his last hours more painful. She sat beside him in the lamplight, watching his chest rise and fall, each breath a struggle. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, the stove ticked and settled. "Don't you dare die on me," she said quietly. "You hear me, Vorn? I didn't drag your stubborn ass through a blizzard just to watch you quit now." He didn't answer, didn't even move. She checked his pulse. Still there, still fighting. Mara leaned back against the wall, exhausted beyond measure. She'd been awake for 36 hours straight. Her eyes burned, her hands shook. But she couldn't sleep. If she slept, she might miss the moment when he stopped breathing, might lose the chance to do something, anything. She'd lost too many people already. Her parents, years ago. Her husband, in a way, long before he actually died. Pieces of herself she'd never get back. She wasn't losing this. Wasn't losing him. Somewhere around midnight, his fever broke. Not completely, but enough. The thrashing stopped. His breathing evened out. When she touched his forehead, it was still hot but no longer scalding. Mara put her head in her hands and didn't cry. She'd forgotten how, somewhere along the way. But the relief hit hard enough that she had to sit there for a long time, just breathing. When she finally looked up, Elias's eyes were open, actually seeing her. "Hey," he rasped. "Hey yourself." "How long was I out?" 2 days. He tried to sit up. His leg reminded him why that was a bad idea. The sound he made was somewhere between a groan and a curse. "Don't move. Your leg's broken, probably infected, and if you tear open what I just spent 48 hours trying to fix, I will break the other one myself." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You're mean when you're tired. You have no idea." She got him water. He drank it slowly, hands shaking. When he was done, he looked at her properly. "You saved my life. You would have done the same." "No, I wouldn't have." His voice was flat, honest. "I would have thought about it. Probably talked myself out of it. Told myself you'd be safer inside, that I wasn't worth the risk. You are worth the risk. Why? It was the same question he'd asked when she'd pulled him out of the snow. She'd answered honestly then. She did it again now, because somewhere in the last 2 months, you stopped being just the man who gave me a job. You became someone I couldn't afford to lose. Elias looked away first. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it, just don't die. I'll try. She adjusted his blankets, checked the splint. The swelling had gone down slightly. The red had stopped spreading. It wasn't better, not really, but it wasn't worse. That counted as a win. You talked in your fever, she said carefully, about someone named Sarah and kids. His whole body went rigid. I didn't ask for those pieces of your past, she continued, but you gave them anyway. So now I know you're carrying something heavy. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here. If you don't, that's fine too. But either way, you're not alone in it anymore. The silence stretched so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, Sarah was my wife. We had 2 girls, Emma and Claire, 7 and 5. Mara waited. There was a fire. Happened fast. I was in the barn when I saw the smoke. By the time I got there, the whole house was going up. I tried to get inside, tried twice. The roof came down before I could reach them. His voice was completely flat. The kind of flat that came from telling a story so many times it stopped feeling real. I pulled Sarah out. She was already gone. Couldn't get to the girls. Couldn't even find them after. The fire took everything. How long ago? 8 years. We had a homestead down in the valley near Helena. After they died, I couldn't stay. Couldn't look at that land. So I came up here, built the trading post, figured if I was alone at least I couldn't lose anyone else. Mara's chest ached. That's not living. That's just waiting to die. Yeah, I know. Is that what you want, to wait it out? He finally looked at her again. I don't know what I want anymore. Didn't until you showed up. And now I'm real confused about the whole thing. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Welcome to the club. They sat there in the lamplight, 2 broken people who'd found each other by accident and didn't quite know what to do about it. Your turn, Elias said. You told me about your husband, but not the whole story. No? No. You said he was good until he wasn't. That's not the whole story. Fair enough, she'd asked for his ghosts. Only right that she offer hers. His name was Thomas Dellin. We met in Chicago. I was working as a bookkeeper for a shipping company. He was a lawyer, smart, charming, everything I thought I wanted. We got married fast, too fast. She paused, gathering the words. First year was fine. Second year he started drinking, started getting angry, started telling me I was too opinionated, too independent, too much. Third year, the anger turned into something else. He never hit me, but he didn't have to. He knew exactly how to make me feel small without ever raising his hand. What changed? Elias asked quietly. I did, or I tried to. I started hiding money, planning to leave. But Thomas found out. He said if I tried to run, he'd make sure I lost everything. My job, my reputation, everything. Said he had friends who'd make sure I never worked as a bookkeeper again. So what'd you do? I waited, kept my head down. And then one night he came home drunk, angrier than usual. Started throwing things. One of them hit him in just the wrong way, fell, cracked his head on the corner of a table. By the time I got to him, he was already gone. Elias's expression didn't change. You didn't kill him. No. But part of me was relieved when he died. What kind of person does that make me? The kind who survived something that should have broken you. She hadn't expected absolution. Didn't quite know what to do with it. After he died, I left Chicago, came west, changed cities every few months, kept moving until I ran out of places to run. Ended up here because nowhere else seemed far enough. And now? Now I'm tired of running, but I don't know how to stop. Elias shifted slightly, winced. Maybe you don't have to figure it out alone. It was the closest either of them had come to saying what was actually happening between them. Not friendship, not quite, but something that was starting to feel essential. Mara stood, moved to the stove. I'm making soup. You're eating it, and then you're sleeping while I keep watch. You need sleep too. I'll sleep when I'm sure you're not going to die on me. Stubborn. You have no room to talk. She heard him laugh, quiet, pained, but real. It was maybe the first time she'd heard him laugh since she'd arrived. Progress, she thought. Small, fragile, but progress. The days that followed fell into a pattern shaped by necessity and proximity. Elias couldn't walk, could barely move without pain. Mara became nurse, cook, and everything else. She changed his bandages, monitored the infection, forced food and water down his throat when he didn't want it. He was a terrible patient, complained about being useless, tried to work from the bed, got frustrated when his body wouldn't cooperate. You're healing, she told him for the third time that week. That's your job right now. My job is running this place. Your place is being run just fine. Sit down before you fall down. You can't do everything yourself. Watch me. And she did. Kept the stove going, managed the inventory, even ventured out to the stable twice a day to check on the horses and bring in firewood. The cold tried to kill her every time. She went anyway. Elias watched her with something that looked like wonder and guilt mixed together. I should be doing this, he said one evening as she came in, half frozen, arms full of wood. You should be healing. That's what you should be doing. I don't know how to just sit here and let someone else take care of things. Learn. She dumped the wood by the stove, started stripping off the ice-crusted outer layers. Her fingers were numb. Her face felt like it might crack. Come here, Elias said. What? Come here. Let me see your hands. She crossed to him. He took her hands in his. His were warmer, despite the fever he'd only recently kicked. He rubbed them gently, bringing feeling back. You're going to lose fingers if you keep this up, he said quietly. We need firewood. We need you alive more. That's rich, coming from the man who went out in a blizzard alone. Yeah, and look how that turned out. He kept working on her hands. I was stupid. You don't have to be stupid too. The touch was doing something to her, breaking down walls she'd built on purpose. She pulled away. I'm fine. You're not. You're exhausted. You've been taking care of me for 2 weeks without sleep, without help, without anything. Mara, you can't keep this up. What choice do I have? You could trust me to be okay for a few hours while you rest. Last time I did that, you almost died. The words came out harsher than she meant. Elias went quiet. I'm sorry, she said. That wasn't fair. No, it was. You're scared. I get it. I'm not scared. You're terrified of losing someone again, of caring about someone and having them taken away. I know, because I've been living that fear for 8 years. She sat down hard on the floor. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Care about someone. It's been so long since I let myself. I don't remember how it works. Elias looked at her with those steady eyes that saw too much. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's just messy and complicated and scary, but maybe it's worth it anyway. Is it worth it? I don't know, but I'm starting to think I'd like to find out. They were crossing into territory neither of them had mapped, territory that could blow up in their faces or save them both. Mara was too tired to figure out which. I'll rest, she said, but only for a few hours, and you wake me if anything changes. Deal. She made it to her room, collapsed on the bed fully clothed. Sleep hit like a hammer. She woke 6 hours later to the smell of coffee and something burning. Mara stumbled downstairs to find Elias at the stove, balancing on one leg, trying to flip something that might have been intended as bread. What are you doing? He turned, nearly fell. Making breakfast. On a broken leg. It's healing. It's been 2 weeks. Sit down before you break it worse. I'm fine. You're an idiot. Yeah, probably. He grinned at her, and something in her chest did a complicated flip. But I'm an idiot who made you coffee. She took the cup he offered. The coffee was terrible. She drank it anyway. How's the leg really? She asked. Hurts like hell, but the swelling's down. I can put a little weight on it. Don't. Wasn't asking permission. They were both stubborn, both used to doing everything alone. Learning to depend on each other was like learning a new language. Awkward, full of missteps, frustrating as hell. But they were learning. Christmas came and went without acknowledgement. Neither of them celebrated it. Just another day of snow and survival. Then January hit. If November and December had been brutal, January was something else entirely. The temperature dropped so low that breath froze in the air. The snow fell in waves that buried the outpost to the second-story window. The wind howled like something alive and angry. They were trapped inside for days at a time. Elias was mobile now, hobbling around with a crutch he'd made from an old rifle stock. His leg would never be quite right again. But it was healing. Mara had saved it, and him. Being trapped together in close quarters should have driven them apart. Instead, it did the opposite. They talked, really talked, about things that mattered and things that didn't. Elias told her about his girls, about Emma's laugh and Claire's stubborn streak. Mara told him about Chicago, about the life she'd left behind, about the person she'd been before Thomas broke her down. They played cards by lamplight. Elias taught her poker. She took him for everything he had. "You're cheating," he accused. "I'm counting cards. There's a difference." "That's definitely cheating. Prove it." They cooked together, argued about the best way to make stew. Discovered that they both hated beans but ate them anyway because beans were cheap and filling. They worked together. Mara still handled the books, but Elias taught her about furs, about how to grade quality, about which trappers could be trusted and which ones would sell you garbage if you let them. And slowly, in small moments that neither of them quite acknowledged, they started existing in each other's space like it was natural. Elias would brush past her to reach something on a shelf, and neither of them would flinch. Mara would adjust his blanket at night without asking if he needed it. They'd sit by the fire after dinner, not talking, just being, and it didn't feel empty. One night in late January, a noise woke them both. Someone was trying to break into the storage shed. Elias grabbed his rifle. Mara grabbed hers. They moved to the window and sink, no discussion needed. "How many?" she whispered. "2. Maybe 3. The moon was bright enough to see shapes moving near the shed. Men, bundled against the cold, prying at the lock. "Trappers?" Mara asked. "Maybe, or drifters who know this place has supplies." Elias opened the window an inch. The cold rushed in like a living thing. "You got 10 seconds to clear out," he called. "After that, I start shooting." The figures froze. "We ain't here for trouble, Vorn," a voice called back. "Just need food, we're starving." "Then come to the front door in daylight and we'll trade. Breaking into my storage gets you nothing but a bullet." "Can't wait till daylight. We need food now." Mara recognized something in the voice. Desperation. Real desperation, not the kind you faked. "They might be telling the truth," she said quietly. "Might be. Or might be setting us up. What do you want to do?" Elias thought for a moment. "Cover me. I'm going out." "Like hell you are. Your leg can handle it. You're a better shot anyway. If this goes bad, you take them down." Before she could argue, he was limping toward the door. Mara positioned herself at the window, rifle steady, heart pounding. Elias stepped onto the porch. "Show yourselves. Hands where I can see them." 3 figures emerged from behind the shed, young men, barely out of boyhood, thin, shaking from more than just cold. "We got snowed in at the Canyon Ridge camp," one of them said. "Been up there 6 weeks. Supplies ran out. We tried to make it down, but the pass is blocked. This was the only place close enough." "Canyon Ridge," Elias's voice was flat. "That's Morrison's camp." "Yes, sir. We were working for Morrison. He was supposed to send supplies in December. They never came." Morrison. The same Morrison who'd agreed to guaranteed monthly runs. Mara's stomach dropped. "How long since you ate?" Elias asked. 3 days. Real food, I mean. We've been eating bark and whatever else we could find." Elias stood there for a long moment. Then, "Put your hands down. Come inside." "Elias," Mara started. "They're kids, half-starved. I'm not leaving them out here." He was right. She knew he was right. But her instincts were screaming danger. She kept the rifle ready as the 3 men filed inside. Up close, they looked worse. Frostbite on their faces, eyes hollow. One was coughing in a way that sounded like pneumonia. "Sit," Elias ordered. "Don't touch anything." They sat. Mara kept the rifle on them while Elias got out bread and dried meat. The men ate like they'd forgotten what food tasted like. When they'd eaten, the one who'd done most of the talking, name was Peters, turned out, gave them the full story. Morrison had sent them up in November with promises of regular supply runs. The first run never came. The second didn't either. By Christmas, they'd realized they were on their own. "Why didn't you leave earlier?" Mara asked. "We tried. Got 100 yards down the pass before a storm turned us back. Lost Hendricks in that storm. After that, we were too weak to try again." "And Morrison?" Elias's voice was hard. "You know you're stranded up there?" "Don't know. We got no way to send word." Mara and Elias exchanged a look. They were both thinking the same thing. Morrison had made promises. Guaranteed runs through February. Either he'd lied, or something had gone very wrong. "You can stay the night," Elias said. "Tomorrow, if the weather holds, we'll get you down to the valley. But you try anything at all, and you'll regret it." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." They set the men up in the storage room with blankets and food. Mara and Elias took turns keeping watch through the night. Nothing happened. The men slept like the dead. In the morning, the weather had cleared enough to see the valley below. Elias gave them supplies and directions to the nearest settlement. "Tell them Morrison left you stranded," he said. "Tell them Vorn says Morrison broke his contract." Peters nodded. "We will." "And sir, thank you. You saved our lives." After they left, Mara and Elias stood on the porch watching them disappear into the snow. "You think Morrison broke the contract deliberately?" Mara asked. "I think something's wrong. Question is what?" "We need to find out." "Yeah, we do, but that means going down to the valley, and I can't make that trip on this leg." "Then I'll go." He turned to her sharply. "No, we need to know what's happening. If Morrison's breaking contracts, if he's leaving men to die, we need to deal with it, not alone. You go down there alone and anything could happen. So come with me." "I can't, not yet." They were at an impasse, both stubborn, both right. Finally Mara said, "Then we wait, till your leg's strong enough. But we don't wait long. Those men almost died because Morrison didn't keep his word. How many others are up in these mountains right now, counting on supplies that aren't coming?" Elias's jaw tightened. "February. We go in February. That gives me 3 more weeks to heal." "February," she agreed. They went inside, neither one acknowledging what they'd just decided. They were going to face Morrison together, as partners. Not employer and employee. Not landlord and tenant. Partners. The mountain howled its approval or its warning, hard to tell which. February came in mean. The cold had teeth now, the kind that found every gap in the walls, every weakness in their defenses. But Elias could walk without the crutch for short distances, and that was enough. They'd agreed to leave on the 15th if the weather held. The weather didn't hold. A storm rolled in on the 13th and stayed for 5 days straight. Snow came down so thick they couldn't see the stable from the porch. The wind sounded like it was trying to tear the roof off. Mara paced like a caged animal. "Sitting here won't change the weather," Elias said from his chair by the stove. "I know that." "Then stop wearing a hole in the floor." She shot him a look. "Men might be dying up in those camps. Every day we wait. Every day we wait, I get stronger, and we get smarter." He gestured to the map spread across the table. "Come here. I want to show you something." She crossed to him, reluctant. "Morrison's operation runs out of Helena, but his money comes from back east. Railroad investors mostly. Men who don't know frontier from farmland." Elias tapped a circled location on the map. "This is his main office. He keeps 2 sets of books, one for his investors, one that's real. I've seen traders do it before." "How do you know he's doing it?" "Because the numbers don't work. He promised guaranteed runs through February, but his profit margins wouldn't support that unless he was cutting corners somewhere. My guess? He's telling his investors he's making the runs, pocketing the money, and leaving the camps to fend for themselves." Mara studied the map. "If we can prove that, we can break him, but proving it means getting into that office. Which means getting to Helena. Which means a 3-day ride in this weather, minimum." Elias met her eyes. "You sure you want to do this? Are you?" "I asked first." She pulled out the chair across from him, sat. "Those boys who showed up here, they were starving. One of them might not make it even with the help we gave them. How many others are out there right now counting on supplies that'll never come? Could be dozens, could be more." "Then, yes, I'm sure." Elias nodded slowly. "All right then. We go as soon as this storm breaks. But we do it smart. No heroics, No taking unnecessary risks. We get in, get what we need, get out. Agreed. The storm finally cleared on the 19th. They left on the 20th. The trip down was brutal. 3 feet of fresh snow made the horses work for every step. The cold was relentless, finding ways through their layers no matter how carefully they'd dressed. Twice they had to stop and dig the horses out of drifts. Once, Elias's leg gave out completely, and he couldn't hide the pain. We should rest, Mara said. We keep moving. Stop now, and we'll freeze. Your leg. My leg is my problem. Keep moving. She wanted to argue, but he was right. The cold didn't care about pain or pride. It just kept taking. They made it to a way station on the second night, a rough cabin maintained by the territorial government for exactly this kind of trip. It was supposed to have firewood and basic supplies. It had been stripped clean. Morrison, Mara said, looking at the empty shelves. Maybe. Or just someone desperate. Elias was already gathering what wood he could find outside. Either way, we're not stopping here. We have to. It's dark and the temperature's dropping. Then we make do with what we've got. They huddled together that night, sharing body heat, burning what little wood Elias had found. It wasn't enough. The cold crept in anyway, settling into their bones. Mara had never been so cold in her life. Her teeth wouldn't stop chattering. Her fingers had gone numb hours ago. Come here, Elias said. What? You're freezing. Come here. She moved closer. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her against his chest. The warmth was immediate and shocking. This doesn't mean anything, she said through chattering teeth. Of course not. Just survival. Right, survival. But his arms stayed around her, solid and sure, and she let herself lean into it, let herself take the comfort she'd been denying herself for so long. Your leg, she said after a while. How bad is it really? Bad enough. Elias, he sighed. It hurts. All the time. Probably always will. The bone didn't set quite right, and the cold makes it worse, but I can walk on it. That's more than I had a month ago. Because of me. Yeah, because of you. His voice was quiet in the darkness. You saved my life, Mara. More than once now. I don't know how to repay that. You don't have to repay it. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? She didn't have an answer, didn't know the rules for whatever this was between them. We should sleep, she said instead. Long day tomorrow. Yeah. But neither of them moved. They stayed there, wrapped around each other, sharing warmth, and something else neither wanted to name. When Mara finally slept, she dreamed of fire and ice, of running and standing still, of being alone and being found. She woke to gray light and Elias already moving, packing their supplies with methodical efficiency. How long was I out? She asked. Few hours. We should get moving. His face was closed off again, all business. Whatever moment they'd shared in the dark was locked away now. Fine. She could do that too. They rode into Helena just before noon on the third day. The town had grown since Mara had passed through months ago. New buildings, new people, the kind of boom that came when railroad money started flowing. The streets were mud and melting snow, crowded with freight wagons and men shouting prices. Morrison Trading Company sat on the main street, a 2-story building that tried too hard to look important. We can't just walk in there, Mara said, studying the building from across the street. Why not? Because if he's doing what we think he's doing, he'll have guards, protection, men who ask questions. So we don't give them time to ask. Elias started across the street before she could stop him. Mara cursed and followed. Inside, the office was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place designed to intimidate. A clerk sat at a desk near the door, young and nervous. Mr. Vorn, the clerk stammered, we weren't expecting you. Where's Morrison? He's in a meeting. I can't. Yes, you can. Elias's voice was flat, dangerous. Get him, now. The clerk practically ran up the stairs. Mara kept her hand near the pocket where she'd stashed a small pistol, just in case. Morrison came down a minute later, all false smiles and extended hands. Vorn, what brings you all the way to Helena? Should have sent word, I would have. Canyon Ridge Camp. How many men you got up there? Morrison's smile faltered. I'm sorry? Simple question. How many men at Canyon Ridge? I'd have to check the records. Check them. Something shifted in Morrison's eyes. The smile disappeared. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office. Privately. I'm fine discussing it right here. I insist. Morrison's tone had gone cold. Miss Dellen, you're welcome to join us as well. They followed him upstairs to an office that was twice the size of Elias's entire trading post. Morrison settled behind a massive desk, folded his hands. Now then, what's this really about? 3 men showed up at my outpost 2 weeks ago, Elias said. Starving. Said they'd been stranded at Canyon Ridge since December waiting for supplies that never came. Said you promised regular runs and didn't deliver. If supplies didn't reach them, it was due to weather. Surely you understand. I understand you made a contract. Guaranteed runs through February. Those men almost died. Morrison's expression hardened. I made no such guarantee. Perhaps Miss Dellen misunderstood the terms when she negotiated. I didn't misunderstand anything. Mara pulled a folded paper from her coat. This is the contract you signed. Paragraph 3, line 6. Guaranteed monthly supply runs through February regardless of weather conditions. Your signature's right there. She laid the contract on the desk. Morrison barely glanced at it. Contracts can be renegotiated when circumstances change. Not without both parties agreeing, Mara said, and we didn't agree to anything. You're not a party to this contract. You're Vorn's employee. I'm his partner, and I'm the one who negotiated this deal. So yes, I'm a party to it. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying them both. I see. Well, this has been illuminating, but I'm afraid you've wasted a trip. The contract will be honored to the best of my ability, weather permitting. If men at Canyon Ridge didn't receive supplies, that's unfortunate but not actionable. Now, if you'll excuse me, we're not done. Elias's voice cut through the room like a blade. Actually, we are. Jackson! The door opened. 2 men stepped in, both armed. Not guards, hired muscle. Escort Mr. Vorn and Miss Dellen out. They're no longer welcome on these premises. You're making a mistake, Mara said quietly. The only mistake I made was doing business with small-time trappers who don't understand how the real world works. Jackson, get them out. The 2 men moved forward. Elias tensed. Don't, Mara said under her breath. Not here. She was right. Fighting their way out would just get them arrested or worse. They let themselves be escorted out, down the stairs, onto the street. The door slammed behind them. Elias's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. We just got thrown out like garbage. Yes, but we got what we came for. What are you talking about? We got nothing. We got Morrison nervous, and we got confirmation that he's hiding something. She started walking, keeping her voice low. Did you see his face when I mentioned the contract? He barely looked at it. He already knew what it said. So? So he's been planning this. The broken contract, the abandoned camps. It's deliberate. He's cutting costs and blaming weather. Proving that is the problem. Then we find proof. They walked in silence, working through options. Helena was bigger than Mara remembered, full of people who'd come west chasing railroad money, or gold rumors, or just the promise of something better. Most would end up disappointed. There, Elias said, nodding toward a building at the end of the street. Land office. They keep records of all commercial operations in the territory. If Morrison's running camps, there'll be permits, location records, supply manifests. Public records? Supposed to be. Whether they'll let us see them is another question. They tried anyway. The land office clerk was a dried-up man named Patterson, who looked like he'd been born annoyed. He listened to their request with the expression of someone being asked to dig his own grave. Morrison Trading Company records? Those are commercial documents, not available to the public. We're not the public, Mara said. We have a contract with Morrison. We need to verify compliance. Take it up with a lawyer. We're taking it up with you. Patterson's expression went from annoyed to hostile. You hard of hearing. I said no. Now get out before I have you removed. Outside, Elias kicked a post hard enough to make it shudder. This whole town's bought off. Maybe. Or maybe just scared. Mara was thinking. Patterson said commercial documents aren't public, but he didn't say they weren't there. So? So we come back after dark. Elias stared at her. You want to break into the land office. You have a better idea? Mara, if we get caught, we won't get caught. I've done this before. Done what before? Breaking into government offices? She met his eyes. I told you I did a lot of things in Chicago. This was one of them. He didn't ask for details, just nodded slowly. All right, but we do it smart. We scout the building first, find the exits, make sure we can get out fast if something goes wrong. Agreed. They spent the afternoon mapping the land office, noting patrol patterns, watching who came and went. Patterson left at 5 sharp, locking the front door behind him. A night watchman showed up at 6, made a circuit of the building, then settled in the front office with a newspaper. He'll do rounds every 2 hours, Elias said. We go in at 8, gives us until 10 to find what we need and get out. The waiting was the worst part. They found a boarding house, paid for a room, tried to act casual. Mara couldn't eat. Her stomach was twisted too tight. You don't have to do this, Elias said. I can go alone. No, you can't. Your leg won't let you climb. Climb? The second-floor window faces the alley. No one watches it. We go up, get in, find the files, get out. You've really done this before. More times than I want to count. In Chicago. Yes. For your husband. She looked away. Thomas had clients who needed information. Sometimes that information wasn't freely given, so I got it for them. You were a thief. I was a bookkeeper who sometimes bent the rules. There's a difference. Not much of one. You want to judge me for it, do it later. Right now, I'm the only chance we have of proving Morrison's lying. Elias was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm not judging you, just trying to figure out who you really are. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. At 8 o'clock, they moved. The alley was dark, empty. Elias boosted Mara up to the window ledge. She worked the lock with a piece of wire, old skills coming back like muscle memory. The window opened with barely a sound. Inside, she dropped to the floor, silent. Elias came up after her, slower, favoring his leg. The office was dim, lit only by moonlight through the windows. File cabinets lined the walls, each labeled with company names and dates. Morrison Trading Company, third cabinet from the left. Mara went to work while Elias kept watch at the door. The files were organized by date, then by camp location. She found Canyon Ridge, pulled the folder. Supply manifests, permit applications, payment records. And there it was. Morrison had documented 3 supply runs to Canyon Ridge between December and January, signed off on delivery, recorded the expenses, billed his investors for the costs. But the runs had never happened. The delivery signatures were forged. Mara recognized the handwriting as Morrison's from the contracts she'd negotiated. He'd been billing his investors for supplies he never sent, pocketing the difference. How many camps? Elias asked quietly from the door. Mara checked the other folders. 6, all showing the same pattern, documented deliveries that never happened. How much money are we talking? She did quick math in her head. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. A sound from below. Footsteps. Watchman's early, Elias hissed. Mara grabbed the Canyon Ridge file, shoved it in her coat. We need to go. They were halfway to the window when the door opened. The watchman stood there, lamp in one hand, pistol in the other. He was young, maybe 20, and looked terrified. Don't move, I'll shoot. Easy, Elias said, hands up. We're not here to hurt anyone. You're breaking into the land office. That's a hanging offense. Listen to me. Shut up. I'm getting the sheriff. You move and I'll shoot you where you stand. The watchman backed toward the stairs, keeping the gun trained on them. The second he was out of sight, Mara grabbed Elias. Window. Now. He'll shoot. He's too scared to shoot straight. Move. They went through the window fast, Mara first, Elias right behind. They hit the alley running, the watchman's shouts echoing behind them. Stop! Stop or I'll... A shot cracked through the air. Went wide, hitting bricks somewhere to their left. They ran. Elias's leg was screaming, but he kept pace. They cut through alleys, crossed streets, doubled back twice to lose pursuit. By the time they stopped, they were 3 blocks away, gasping for air in the shadows behind a stable. You said he wouldn't shoot, Elias managed. I said he wouldn't shoot straight. I was right. By about 6 inches. 6 inches is enough. Mara checked her coat. The file was still there. intact. We got what we needed. We also got the law looking for us. Then we don't stay here. We find a lawyer, show them this file, and we bury Morrison before he can bury us. Middle of the night? What lawyer's going to see us now? Mara smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. The kind who hates Morrison as much as we do. She led him through the dark streets to a small office near the courthouse. The sign read, Marcus Webb, Attorney at Law. How do you know this guy? Elias asked. I don't, but I know his reputation. He takes cases against big companies. Win or lose, he doesn't back down. She knocked on the door. And right now, that's what we need. No answer. She knocked again. Harder. A window on the second floor opened. A man's voice, rough with sleep and whiskey, called down. Whatever you're selling, I don't want it. We're not selling anything. We need a lawyer. Come back in the morning. We need one now. We have evidence of fraud. Commercial fraud involving Morrison Trading Company. A pause. Then, stay there? The window closed. A minute later, the door opened. Marcus Webb was maybe 50, with the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped being surprised by any of it. He wore a nightshirt and held a lamp, studying them with bloodshot eyes. Morrison Trading? You'd better not be wasting my time. Mara held up the file. Forged delivery records, stolen investor money, men left to die in the mountains. Is that enough? Webb's expression changed. Get inside, fast. They followed him up to his office. He lit more lamps, spread the file across his desk, started reading. The silence stretched. Mara watched his face, saw the moment he understood what he was looking at. Where did you get this? The land office. Legally? Not exactly. Webb looked up. So this evidence was obtained illegally. Any judge will throw it out. Unless you can get a warrant based on probable cause, Mara said. These documents show a pattern of fraud. That's enough for a territorial judge to order a full investigation. Maybe, if the judge isn't in Morrison's pocket. Is he? Some days yes, some days no. Depends on his mood and how much Morrison's paid him lately. Webb closed the file. This is dangerous. Morrison has money, connections, hired men. You go after him with this, he'll come after you. He's already coming after us, Elias said. Difference is, now we can hit back. Webb studied them both. Why? Why risk this? Morrison's not your problem. He made himself our problem when he broke a contract and left men to die. Elias's voice was hard. We're not letting that stand. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Webb picked up the file again. I'll take the case, but I need your testimony, both of you, and you need to understand this could get ugly. Morrison won't go down quiet. We don't care about quiet, Mara said. We care about right. Webb almost smiled. Then we'd better move fast. Morrison will know about the break-in by morning. Once he does, he'll start covering his tracks. We file for the warrant at dawn, serve it before he can destroy evidence. What do you need from us? Sworn statements, details on the contract, the abandoned camps, everything. And then you stay out of sight until the hearing. Morrison finds you before then. This whole thing falls apart. They spent the next 3 hours going over every detail, signing statements, building the case. By the time they were done, the sky was starting to lighten. There's a boarding house 2 streets over, Webb said. Run by a woman named Martha. Tell her I sent you. She'll keep you hidden until the hearing. When will that be? 3 days? Maybe 4. I'll send word. He walked them to the door. And Vorn? Whatever you did to piss off Morrison this bad, it's going to cost you. Win or lose, he won't forget. Neither will I, Elias said. Outside, the street was empty, the town still sleeping. They walked to the boarding house in silence, exhaustion hitting hard now that the adrenaline was fading. Martha turned out to be a broad woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She took one look at them and said, Webb strays? Yes, ma'am, Mara said. Upstairs, second room on the left. You don't leave, you don't make noise. You don't exist until he says otherwise. Clear? Clear. The room was small, clean, with one bed and a chair. They stared at it. I'll take the floor, Elias said. Your leg can't handle the floor. Then you take the bed. We can share. It's big enough. Mara. It's just sleep, Elias. We've shared worse. She started pulling off her boots. And I'm too tired to argue about it. He hesitated, then nodded. They lay down on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to touch, both staring at the ceiling. We did it, Mara said after a while. We actually got the evidence. Yeah, now we just have to survive long enough to use it. You worried? Terrified. You? Same. Silence. Then Elias said, You were impressive tonight. The way you handled Webb, the way you got us out of that office. You're good at this. I've had practice. Not the kind of practice most people get. No, not most people. More silence. Mara could feel sleep pulling at her, but she fought it. There was something she needed to say. Elias? When this is over, when we go back to the mountain, what happens then? What do you mean? I mean us. Whatever this is between us, what happens to it? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I don't know. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. Why not? Because I'm scared. Of wanting something I can't have. Of losing something before I've even figured out what it is. Mara rolled over to face him. He did the same. I'm scared too, she said. But I think I'm more scared of not trying. Trying what? This, us, whatever it could be. His hand found hers in the space between them. If we survive the next few days. When we survive. When, he agreed. They fell asleep like that, hands linked, facing each other in the gray morning light. Two people who'd run from their pasts straight into each other's futures. Outside, Helena was waking up, and somewhere in the town, Morrison was learning about the break-in at the land office. The fight was just beginning. The knock came at dawn on the second day. 3 sharp raps, then Webb's voice through the door. It's me. Open up. Elias was already moving, pistol in hand. Mara grabbed hers from under the pillow. They'd learned not to trust anything in this town. Webb looked worse than when they'd last seen him. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it, or hadn't slept at all. We got the warrant, he said without preamble. Judge signed it an hour ago. We serve Morrison at noon. That's good news, Mara said. Why do you look like it's not? Webb stepped inside, closed the door. Because Morrison knows. Someone tipped him off about the break-in, about you two, about everything. He's lawyered up with Caldwell and Associates out of Denver. Big firm, expensive, mean as hell. So he's scared, Elias said. He's preparing. There's a difference. Webb pulled out a chair, sat heavily. Caldwell's already filed a motion to dismiss based on illegally obtained evidence. They're claiming the warrant was issued on false pretenses and demanding to know who broke into the land office. What did you tell them? That my sources are confidential, but here's the problem. If Morrison can prove you two committed the break-in, he can have you arrested, and once you're in jail, your testimony becomes worthless. Fruit of the poisonous tree. Mara's stomach dropped. He's going to flip this, make us the criminals instead of him. He's going to try. That's why we need to move fast. The hearing's set for tomorrow morning. We present our case, show the forged documents, get Morrison on record denying the allegations. Once he's under oath, we own him. Unless he doesn't show, Elias said. He'll show. His lawyers will make sure of it. Not showing makes him look guilty. Webb stood, started pacing. But here's what worries me. Morrison's not just lawyering up. He's making moves. Word is, he's offering money to anyone who can identify the people who broke into the land office. $500. That's a lot of money, Mara said quietly. It's enough to make people look hard at strangers in town. Which is what you are. Webb stopped pacing, looked at them both. I need you to stay hidden. Don't go outside, don't show your faces, don't give anyone a reason to remember you're here. Can you do that? For how long? 24 hours. After the hearing, you're either cleared or you're running. Either way, hiding won't matter anymore. After Webb left, they sat in the small room, the walls feeling closer than before. We should have stayed on the mountain, Elias said. You don't mean that. Don't I? We were safe there. Now we're trapped in a room waiting to see if we get arrested or killed. We're fighting back. That's different than hiding. Is it? He stood, started pacing the same path Webb had worn. Mara, I've spent 8 years avoiding exactly this kind of situation. avoiding people, avoiding conflict, avoiding anything that required me to care enough to fight. And now here I am, in the middle of a fight I didn't ask for, risking everything for what? Principle? For the men Morrison left to die. For the contracts he broke. She stopped. For us. For the right to go back to that mountain without looking over our shoulders. You think winning this case does that? I think losing it guarantees we can't. Elias stopped pacing, leaned against the wall. His leg was hurting. She could see it in the way he held himself. I'm not good at this. The fighting, the standing up, the being brave. I used to be. Before the fire, before I lost everything, I was someone who faced problems head on. But that man died with his family. What's left is just someone trying to survive. Mara crossed to him. That's not what I see. What do you see? I see someone who gave a stranger a job when he didn't want the complication. Someone who protected me from Dawes without thinking twice. Someone who's standing here now, scared out of his mind, but standing anyway. She put her hand on his chest, felt his heart beating fast. That's not survival, Elias, that's living. He covered her hand with his. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of running. They stood there, close enough to feel each other breathe. Outside, the town was waking up. Footsteps on the boardwalk, horses in the street, the ordinary sounds of people going about ordinary lives. Elias leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was tentative at first, testing, then deeper, all the words they hadn't said pouring into it. When they finally pulled apart, both were shaking. That was probably a mistake, Elias said. Probably. Should we talk about it? Later. After we survive tomorrow. When we survive tomorrow? When, she agreed, and kissed him again. The rest of the day crawled by. They took turns keeping watch at the window, eating the food Martha brought up, trying not to think about what could go wrong tomorrow. Around sunset, voices in the street below caught Mara's attention. Saw them at Webb's office, I'm telling you. Man and a woman both looked like trouble. Morrison's offering $500. Land office, they say. Broke in and stole documents. Mara stepped back from the window. They're talking about us. Elias joined her, listened. That's Patterson, the land office clerk. Think he saw us that day? Doesn't matter if he did. If enough people start putting pieces together... A knock at the door froze them both. Martha's voice. It's me. Let me in. Quick. Elias opened the door. Martha pushed inside, her face grim. Patterson's down at the saloon running his mouth. Says he's sure he saw two people matching your description casing the land office the day before the break-in. Morrison's men are with him, asking questions. How long before they come here? Mara asked. Could be minutes, could be hours. But they will come. This is the only boarding house in town that takes Webb's referrals. They'll figure it out. Martha moved to the wardrobe, started pulling out clothes. You need to leave, now, before they block the streets. Where do we go? Webb's got a safe house outside town. Old trapper's cabin about 5 miles north. I'll send word to him. Tell him you're there. She thrust the clothes at them. Dark, nondescript, the kind that wouldn't stand out. Change, move fast, and for heaven's sake, don't get caught. They changed quickly, grabbed their weapons, what little money they had. Martha led them down the back stairs to a door that opened onto an alley. Follow the alley east to the edge of town. There's a horse tied behind the livery. Brown mare, white blaze. She's yours. Ride north on the Helena Road, then cut east at the Lightning Split Pine. You'll find the cabin. Thank you, Mara said. Don't thank me. Just don't get killed. Webb needs you alive to win this case. Martha gripped Mara's arm. And between you and me, Morrison deserves what's coming to him. Make sure he gets it. The alley was dark, narrow, smelling of garbage and worse. They moved fast, keeping to the shadows. Behind them, voices were getting louder. Morrison's men spreading out, searching. There! I saw something move! Check the alley! Elias grabbed Mara's hand and they ran. His legs screamed protest, but he pushed through it. Behind them, footsteps pounded. Stop! Stop, or we'll shoot! They burst out of the alley into a back street. The livery was 50 feet away. The mare was right where Martha said she'd be. A shot cracked the air. Went wide. Elias boosted Mara onto the horse, swung up behind her. Another shot, closer this time. The mare didn't need encouragement. She bolted. They rode hard through the darkening streets, past buildings and startled people, into the scrubland north of town. Behind them, more shots, more shouting, but getting fainter. When they finally stopped to breathe, they were a mile out, the town a scatter of lights behind them. "You okay?" Elias asked. "Yeah, you?" "Leg's killing me, but I'm alive." He looked back toward Helena. "They'll come after us. Morrison can't afford to let us testify now. Then we make sure we get to that hearing, whatever it takes." They found the lightning-split pine just as the moon rose. The cabin was rough, barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was shelter. Inside they found supplies Webb had left: dried food, water, blankets, and a note. Hearing moved to 8 a.m. Courthouse, main chamber. Be there or lose everything. 8 hours, Mara said, checking the sky. "We can make it. If Morrison's men don't find us first. Then we don't sleep. We keep watch, stay ready, and ride back at first light." They settled in to wait, taking turns at the window. The night was cold, quiet except for wind and the occasional animal sound. Every shadow looked like a threat. Around midnight, Elias said, "If this goes wrong tomorrow, if we don't make it out, I need you to know something." Don't do the goodbye speech." I'm just..." He stopped, started again. "For 8 years I thought I was done. Thought the best parts of my life were behind me and all that was left was waiting to die. Then you showed up, stubborn and secretive and too smart for your own good. And everything changed. Elias, let me finish. You made me want to live again. Not just survive. Actually live. And whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that. Need you to know that meeting you was the best thing that's happened to me in longer than I can remember." Mara crossed to him, cupped his face in her hands. "Then we make sure tomorrow isn't the end. We go in there, we tell the truth, and we make Morrison pay for what he did. And then we go home." "Home," he repeated, like he was testing the word. "The mountain?" "The mountain, the outpost. Wherever we are together." He kissed her then, hard and desperate, and full of everything they might not get the chance to say tomorrow. When they pulled apart, Mara said, "We should rest, a few hours at least. We need to be sharp for the hearing. You rest, I'll keep watch. We both rest, 2 hours each. I'll take first shift." He didn't argue. Too tired, too worn down by fear and pain and the weight of everything at stake. Mara watched him sleep, watched the way the moonlight cut across his face, the way his chest rose and fell. She thought about the man he'd been when she first arrived, closed off, running from ghosts, barely alive. And the man he was now, still scared, still hurting, but fighting anyway. She'd done that for him, and he'd done the same for her. Outside, an owl called. The wind picked up, rattling the cabin walls. They rode back to Helena at dawn, arriving just as the town was waking. The courthouse was already crowded. Word had spread about the hearing, and everyone wanted to see Morrison taken down. Or see him win. Depended on who was paying you. Webb met them at a side entrance, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. "Thank the heavens, I thought you weren't coming." "We're here," Elias said. "What do we need to know?" Morrison brought a dozen witnesses who will testify he made every delivery. All his employees, all sworn statements. Caldwell's going to argue the forged documents were created by someone trying to frame Morrison, possibly you two. "That's insane," Mara said. "That's lawyering. We need to break their story, show the documents are real, and get Morrison to crack under questioning. Can you do that?" Mara thought about all the years with Thomas, all the times she'd had to parse truth from lies, all the skills she'd learned keeping books for men who didn't want their real numbers known. "Yes, I can do that." The courtroom was packed. Morrison sat at the defendant's table, surrounded by lawyers, looking calm and confident. When he saw Elias and Mara, his expression didn't change, but his eyes went cold. The judge was an older man named Hartley, known for being fair but rigid about procedure. He called the hearing to order, laid out the charges: fraud, breach of contract, criminal negligence. Caldwell stood first, tall and silver-haired and expensive. "Your Honor, this is a witch hunt built on stolen documents and the word of 2 individuals who committed felony burglary. We move for immediate dismissal." "Motion denied," Hartley said. "I've reviewed the evidence," There's enough here to proceed. Mr. Webb, call your first witness. Webb called the three boys from Canyon Ridge, Peters and his companions. They told their story, halting and nervous but honest. Described the starvation, the cold, the way Morrison's promises had turned to ash. Caldwell tore into them on cross-examination. You're certain it was Morrison Trading Company that hired you? Yes, sir. And you have documentation of this employment? We had papers, but they were lost in the storm. How convenient. So we have only your word that you worked for my client? It's the truth. The truth according to young men who broke into Mr. Vaughn's trading post and stole supplies. Who's to say you're not lying now to avoid prosecution? Webb objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Caldwell had planted doubt. Next came the forged documents. Webb entered them into evidence, showed the pattern of phantom deliveries, pointed out Morrison's handwriting on the signatures. Caldwell brought in a handwriting expert who testified the signatures could have been forged by anyone. Without the original documents from Mr. Morrison's office, we can't verify these copies are authentic. We have sworn statements from the land office that these are accurate copies, Webb countered, from an office that was burglarized. For all we know, these documents were created during that burglary. Back and forth, each side landing blows, neither gaining clear advantage. The courtroom crowd murmured and shifted, waiting for something decisive. Then Webb called Elias to the stand. Elias limped to the witness box, hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. He laid out the contract, the broken promises, the way Morrison had abandoned men to die. Caldwell's cross-examination was brutal. He hammered on Elias's isolation, his lack of witnesses, his admitted anger at Morrison. Isn't it true you have a personal vendetta against my client? No. You're not angry that he broke your contract. I'm angry he left men to die. But you can't prove those men worked for Morrison, can you? You have no employment records, no documentation, nothing but their word. Their word is enough. In your opinion, but legally, a man who makes promises and breaks them when it's convenient is called a liar and a cheat. Don't need documentation for that. The crowd muttered approval. Hartley banged his gavel for silence. When Caldwell finished, Elias stepped down. He looked exhausted, wrung out, but he'd held his ground. Then Webb called Mara. She walked to the stand in the same black dress she'd worn the day she arrived at the outpost. Calm, composed, every inch the professional bookkeeper. Webb walked her through the contract negotiation, the terms Morrison had agreed to, the guaranteed delivery clause. And you negotiated this contract on Mr. Vaughn's behalf? I did. What was Mr. Morrison's reaction to the delivery guarantee? He hesitated, said it was unusual, but I pointed out he was getting exclusive access to the best trapping network in the territory. He agreed it was worth the risk. So he understood the terms clearly? Completely. He even had his lawyer review it before signing. Caldwell stood for cross-examination, and Mara saw the trap before he laid it. Miss Dellin, you're quite knowledgeable about contracts and bookkeeping. Where did you receive this education? I worked as a bookkeeper in Chicago. For whom? Various firms. Can you name them? Objection, Webb said. Relevance. Your Honor, I'm establishing the witness's credibility. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Miss Dellin. Mara took a breath. I worked for Thomas Dellin's law practice, among others. Thomas Dellin was your husband? Yes. The same Thomas Dellin who was disbarred in Illinois for falsifying legal documents? The courtroom erupted. Hartley banged his gavel, but the damage was instant and devastating. Caldwell pressed harder. Isn't it true that you assisted your husband in creating fraudulent contracts? No, Isn't it true that you have experience forging documents? I kept books, that's all. Books that helped your husband defraud his clients. And now you're here presenting forged documents against my client. Should we believe this is coincidence? Mara felt the trap close. Everything she'd run from, everything she'd tried to leave behind, it was all coming out now, in front of everyone, destroying any credibility she had. Webb was objecting, Hartley was ruling, but it didn't matter. The jury of public opinion had already decided. Then Elias stood. Your Honor, I have something to say. Mr. Vaughn, you've already testified. This isn't testimony, it's the truth. He limped forward, not waiting for permission. Yeah, Mara worked for a corrupt lawyer. Yeah, she probably saw things she shouldn't have. But you know what else she did? She saved my life, or dragged me out of a blizzard when I was dying, set my leg when it was broken, kept me alive through a fever that should have killed me. Mr. Vorn, this isn't relevant. It's completely relevant, because the woman standing there isn't defined by her worst day or her worst decision. She's defined by what she does when it matters. And what she did was risk everything to stop Morrison from killing more men. That's who she is. Silence in the courtroom. Even Caldwell seemed at a loss. Then Morrison stood. Your Honor, I've heard enough of this circus. These people broke into a government office, stole documents, and fabricated a case against me out of revenge and desperation. I demand they be arrested immediately. Mr. Morrison, Hartley started, they're criminals, both of them, and this court is entertaining their fantasies instead of prosecuting them. Sit down, Mr. Morrison. I will not. I have rights. I have a reputation to protect. I will not be slandered by one more word and I'll hold you in contempt, Hartley snapped. But Morrison was beyond listening. Years of getting his way, of buying outcomes, of never facing consequences. It all came pouring out in a flood of entitled rage. I run a legitimate business. I provide jobs. I take risks these mountain trash could never understand. If some trappers were too stupid to survive winter, that's not my fault. I don't owe them anything. The courtroom went dead silent. Mara saw it, saw the moment Morrison realized what he'd just said, saw the panic flash across his face. Webb stood slowly. Your Honor, I'd like to note that Mr. Morrison just admitted on the record that he knew trappers were dying and considered it not his fault. This directly contradicts his claim that he made all required deliveries. Caldwell was on his feet. My client misspoke. Your client confessed, Webb shot back. He just admitted he abandoned those men. Morrison lunged across the table, face red, finger pointing at Mara. You! This is your fault. You came to my office with your demands and your threats. You think you can destroy me? Two bailiffs grabbed him, pulled him back. Caldwell was trying to do damage control, but it was too late. Morrison had imploded. Hartley banged his gavel. Mr. Morrison, you will control yourself or I will have you removed. Mr. Caldwell, your client just made a very damaging admission. Do you wish to request a recess? Caldwell looked at Morrison, still raging, still fighting the bailiffs, and made a decision. No, Your Honor, I wish to withdraw from this case. You can't, Morrison started. I can, and I am. Your Honor, Caldwell and Associates formally withdraws representation of Morrison Trading Company, effective immediately. It was the ultimate betrayal, and the smartest move Caldwell could make. Distance himself before Morrison dragged him down too. Hartley looked at Morrison. Mr. Morrison, you are now representing yourself. Do you wish to continue this hearing? Morrison seemed to deflate. Without his lawyers, without his protection, he was just a man who'd been caught. I need time to answer the question. Do you wish to continue? Morrison looked at the crowd, at the documents, at Mara and Elias. He looked at what he was about to lose. No, I'm done. Then this court finds sufficient evidence of fraud and criminal negligence to warrant a full investigation of Morrison Trading Company's practices. All business operations are suspended pending said investigation. Mr. Morrison, you're ordered to remain in Helena and surrender all company records within 24 hours. Hartley looked at Webb. Your clients are cleared of all charges. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down like a gunshot. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered, others cursed. Morrison just stood there, looking broken. Mara felt Elias's hand find hers. They'd won. Against all odds, against money and power and corruption, they'd won. Webb pushed through the crowd to them. You did it. I don't know how, but you did it. Morrison did it, Mara said. We just gave him enough rope. What happens now? Elias asked. Now? The territorial governor will take over the investigation. Morrison's assets will be frozen, his records seized. If they find what I think they'll find, he's looking at prison time. Real prison, not the kind you buy your way out of. And the trappers? The camps? The court will appoint someone to manage Morrison's operations until this is resolved. Someone who'll actually do the job. Webb smiled. I nominated you, Vorn. You know the territory, you know the business, and you've got integrity. They'd be fools not to accept. Elias blinked. I don't want Morrison's company. You won't keep it. Just manage it until the investigation's done. Make sure the camps get supplied, the men get paid, the contracts get honored. Isn't that what you wanted? It was. It was exactly what they'd fought for. I'll think about it, Elias said. Outside the courthouse, the spring sun was warm on their faces. The snow was melting, running in rivers down the streets. Winter was finally breaking. They walked back to the boarding house in silence, too exhausted for words. Martha met them at the door with whiskey and broad smiles. You brilliant fools, you actually pulled it off. They drank the whiskey. It burned going down. What now? Mara asked Elias. Now we go home. The mountain? The mountain. They left Helena the next morning, riding the same horses that had brought them down. The trip back was easier. The pass was clear, the weather held, and they weren't running from anything anymore. 3 days later, they crested the final ridge and saw the outpost below. It looked exactly the same weathered building, the same mountain backdrop, the same harsh beauty. But coming back to it felt different. Because they were different. They'd left as two people hiding from their pasts. They were coming back as partners, as something more than partners, though neither had quite figured out what to call it yet. Inside, the outpost smelled like dust and stillness. Mara opened the windows while Elias got a fire going. Within an hour, it felt like home again. That evening, they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the peaks. The wind was still cold, but carried the promise of coming warmth. Webb sent a letter, Elias said. Offered me the Morrison management job. $300 a month plus expenses. That's good money. It's a lot of travel, a lot of time away from here. You should take it. He looked at her. I should? Those camps need someone who'll do right by them. You're that someone. What about the outpost? I can run the outpost. She smiled. I've been running it for months anyway. Yeah, you have. He was quiet for a moment. Mara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Always. Your contract, the 3 months you agreed to, that's up next week. Her stomach dropped. She'd been so focused on Morrison, on survival, on everything else, she'd forgotten about the expiration date on her time here. Yeah, it is. So I'm asking, do you want to stay? Not because of a contract, not because you're running from something, but because you want to. She looked out at the mountain, at the valley below, at the sky going pink and gold, looked at the man sitting beside her, scarred and stubborn, and offering her something she'd thought she'd never have again. A choice. A real one. Yes, she said. I want to stay. Even though it's hard up here, even though winter's brutal and we're isolated and… Elias. Yeah? Shut up and kiss me. He did. Later that night, as they lay in bed in the room that had become hers and might become theirs, Mara said, I have something for you. She pulled a small wooden carving from her bag. A bird, wings spread, caught mid-flight. I made it while you were healing, she said. Wasn't sure I'd ever give it to you, but it felt like something you should have. Elias turned the carving over in his hands. The detail was incredible. Every feather distinct, the whole thing balanced on the edge of taking flight. It's perfect. It's you, stuck in one place but still trying to fly. Was me. Not anymore. He set the bird on the windowsill where it would catch the morning light. Now I'm someone who's learned there's strength in standing still, as long as I'm not standing alone. You're not alone. No, I'm not. Spring came to the mountain in stages. First the snow melted, then the streams ran high, then the first green appeared on the lower slopes. The trappers started coming back, bringing news of Morrison's arrest and trial. The camps were being restocked under Elias's management. The men who'd been abandoned were being compensated. Justice was slow, but it was coming. Mara ran the outpost with the same fierce competence she'd brought to everything else. She expanded their contracts, brought in new business, turned the trading post into something that actually made money instead of just scraping by. Elias spent half his time traveling to camps, the other half at the outpost. His leg never fully healed, but he learned to work around it. The pain became part of him, a reminder of the night Mara had saved his life. They fought sometimes. Both were too stubborn not to. Mara wanted to expand faster than Elias thought was safe. Elias wanted to keep things simple when Mara saw opportunities for growth, but they learned to fight fair, to listen, to compromise, and they learned to be happy, not the easy happiness of people who'd never been broken. The hard-won happiness of survivors who'd found each other in the dark and decided to build something in the light. One evening in late May, as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Elias said, "I was thinking, dangerous. About names, the outpost. What about it? It's called Vorn's Outpost, has been since I built it, but it's not just mine anymore." So? So maybe it should be Vorn and Dellen's partners? Mara looked at him. Is that what we are? Partners? I don't know what else to call it. You're not my employee, not really my business partner either. He stopped, started again. You're the person I want to build a life with, whatever that means. It means we're partners, she said softly. In everything. Vorn and Dellen's, then? Vorn and Dellen's? They shook on it, formal and serious. Then they laughed because the formality was ridiculous given everything they'd been through. Summer came, and with it, a steady stream of trappers and traders, and people who'd heard about the outpost that stood up to Morrison and won. The business grew. The mountain remained harsh, but no longer felt empty. In July, a letter came from Webb. Morrison had been sentenced to 15 years. His company had been dissolved, the assets sold, the money distributed to the men he'd cheated. Justice, messy and imperfect, but real. In August, Elias asked Mara to marry him. No ring, no grand gesture, just a quiet question on a clear morning. She said yes. They married in September, a small ceremony at the outpost with Webb as witness and Martha as the only guest. No church, no crowd, just two people promising to face whatever came next together. When winter came again, the first full winter they'd face as partners, as husband and wife, they were ready. The outpost was stocked, the business was stable, and they had each other. The first snow fell in November, heavy and silent. They watched it from the porch, wrapped in blankets, drinking coffee that Mara had learned to make the way Elias liked it. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying here? You could have gone anywhere after Morrison. Could have gone back to Chicago, started over somewhere easier." "I did start over. Here." She leaned into him. "Besides, easy is overrated." "You sure about that? Because winter up here is about to test that theory." "Let it test. I'm not going anywhere." The snow kept falling, covering the mountain in white. But inside the outpost, the fire burned warm. Two people who'd learned that strength wasn't about standing alone sat together, watching the world transform. They'd come to the mountain broken, running, barely alive. They'd found each other by accident and survival. And somewhere along the way, in the cold and the struggle and the fight to do what was right, they'd found something else. They'd found home. Not in the building or the business or the mountain, in each other. The wind howled, the snow piled higher, the temperature dropped. And inside, Elias and Mara held on to what they'd built. Not perfect, not easy, but real and worth fighting for. The mountain had tested them, and they'd survived. Together, they could survive anything. The wooden bird caught the morning light exactly the way Mara had imagined it would. She stood at the window of their room, not hers anymore, theirs, watching how the sun turned the carved wings golden. Outside, October was painting the mountain in colors that made her chest ache, reds and golds against the evergreens, the kind of beauty that felt almost violent in its intensity. Elias was already downstairs. She could hear him moving around, the familiar rhythm of his uneven gait, the sound of the coffee pot settling on the stove. 3 months since the hearing. 3 months since they'd watched Morrison's world collapse in a Helena courtroom. Sometimes it still felt unreal. "You coming down, or you planning to stare at that bird all morning?" Elias called up. "I can do both." "Coffee's getting cold." She smiled, pulled on her boots, headed downstairs. The outpost smelled like wood smoke and the bread she'd baked yesterday. Elias handed her a cup without looking, already reading through a stack of letters that had come in with yesterday's supply run. "Morrison's appeal got denied," he said, not looking up from the page. "Good." Webb says the territorial investigation found fraud in every single camp operation. They're estimating he stole close to $40,000 over 3 years. Mara whistled low. That's a lot of stolen money. Yeah, and a lot of men who got cheated. Elias set the letter down, finally met her eyes. Webb wants to know if I'll testify at the sentencing hearing. They're pushing for maximum penalty, 20 years instead of 15. Will you? I don't know. Part of me wants to see him buried. Other part just wants to be done with it. Move on. Those aren't mutually exclusive, aren't they? Mara took her coffee to the window. A trapper she didn't recognize was approaching on horseback, leading a pack mule loaded heavy. Business never stopped, not even when you were processing what you'd survived. You could do both, she said. Testify, get it done. Then come home and never think about Morrison again. You really think it works that way? No, but I think it's worth trying. The trapper turned out to be a kid, maybe 19, with a face full of hope and inexperience. He had pelts to trade, decent quality, and stories about how he was going to make his fortune in the high country before winter came. Mara handled the negotiation while Elias checked the pelts. The kid was green but not stupid. He knew enough to recognize fair value when he saw it. They settled on a price that left everyone satisfied, and the kid rode off with supplies and plans that probably wouldn't survive first contact with a real Montana winter. He'll be back by November, Elias said, watching him go. If he's smart. If he's lucky, smart doesn't always cut it up here. They worked through the morning in comfortable silence. Mara updated the ledgers while Elias sorted inventory. Around noon, another rider appeared, this one official, wearing a territorial marshal's badge and carrying papers. Elias Vorn? That's me. Marshal Davies, I'm here about the Morrison investigation. He dismounted, handed over an envelope sealed with wax. Court order. You're required to appear for deposition in Helena, October 28th, week from now. Elias took the envelope without opening it. I already testified. This is different. They're building a federal case now. Fraud across territorial lines, possible embezzlement involving railroad investors back east. It's bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Big enough that Washington's paying attention. You and Miss Dellen, he glanced at Mara, or Mrs. Vorn, I guess it is now, you two kicked over a rock that had some nasty things hiding under it. Now everybody wants a piece. After the marshal left, they sat at the table with the unopened envelope between them. We don't have to go, Mara said. Yes, we do. If we don't show, they'll send more marshals. Maybe arrest warrants this time. We didn't do anything wrong. Doesn't matter. We're witnesses. We don't get to choose whether we participate. He opened the envelope, scanned the contents. Says here they want depositions from both of us. 2 days of questioning, possibly more if they find inconsistencies in our testimony. Inconsistencies? We told the truth. Yeah, but that was Montana Territorial Court. This is federal. Different rules, different stakes. They'll go through everything. Morrison's operation, our contract, how we got the evidence, what we did with it. He looked up. They're going to ask about the break-in, Mara. They're going to ask exactly how we obtained those documents. Her stomach went cold. We tell them what we told Webb, that we had sources. Webb could protect us in territorial court. He can't protect us from federal prosecutors if they decide we committed a crime. So what do? We tell the truth, all of it, and we hope they care more about Morrison than about punishing us for breaking a window. The week passed too fast and too slow at the same time. They prepared obsessively, going over every detail of their testimony, making sure their stories aligned perfectly, discussing what to say and what to leave out. But preparation only helped so much. Some things you couldn't plan for. They left for Helena on the 26th, giving themselves extra time in case weather slowed them down. The trip was easier than last time. No blizzards, no desperate flight from hired guns. Just two people riding towards something they couldn't avoid. Helena looked different in fall. Less desperate, more established. The muddy streets had been graded. New buildings were going up on every block. The railroad was bringing money and people, transforming the frontier town into something that aspired to civilization. Webb met them at his office, looking simultaneously exhausted and energized. Federal prosecutors arrived yesterday, 3 of them, all from Washington. They're treating this like the corruption case of the decade. Is it? Mara asked. Might be. Morrison's operation was connected to some railroad investors back east who were using him to inflate land values. They'd report successful operations in Montana Territory, drive up stock prices, then sell before anyone figured out the operations were failing. Classic fraud scheme, just bigger than usual. And Morrison was part of it? Morrison was the patsy. The investors needed someone out here doing the dirty work. He got greedy, got sloppy, got caught. Now they're all scrambling to avoid going down with him. Elias leaned back in his chair. So we're not just testifying against Morrison. We're testifying against people with real money and real power. Yes, which means they're going to come at you hard. They'll try to discredit you, find holes in your story, make you look unreliable. Standard defense strategy. What do we do? Stick to the truth. Don't embellish, don't speculate. If you don't know something, say so. If you're not sure, say that too. The worst thing you can do is get caught in a lie. The deposition started the next morning in a conference room at the courthouse. 3 federal prosecutors, 2 stenographers, 1 federal judge overseeing the process. Everything was formal, recorded, terrifyingly official. They questioned Elias first. 6 hours of detailed interrogation about the contract, the camps, the abandoned trappers, every aspect of Morrison's operation. He answered carefully, precisely, giving them nothing they could twist. Then they got to the evidence. Mr. Vorn, how did you obtain the documents showing forged delivery records? We received them from a source. What source? I'd prefer not to say. The lead prosecutor, a sharp-faced man named Garrison, leaned forward. Mr. Vorn, this is a federal investigation. You don't get to prefer anything. Answer the question. Elias glanced at Webb. Webb gave a small nod. We broke into the land office, Elias said, took copies of Morrison's files. That's how we got the evidence. The room went silent. You committed burglary, Garrison said flatly. Yes, and you're admitting this under oath. You asked how we got the documents. That's how we got them. Garrison exchanged looks with the other prosecutors. Mr. Vorn, you understand this admission makes you liable for criminal prosecution? I understand, but it doesn't change what Morrison did. The documents are real. The fraud is real. How we obtained the evidence doesn't make Morrison innocent. No, but it makes the evidence inadmissible in court. Then find other evidence. Morrison kept records everywhere. His office, his camps, probably his house. You're the federal government. You've got resources we didn't have. Use them. It was a gamble, a huge one. Elias was essentially challenging them to do their job while admitting to a crime. Garrison sat back. We'll take a recess, 30 minutes. After they filed out, Webb turned to Elias. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen someone do in a deposition. Which do you think it was? Both. Definitely both. When the prosecutors returned, Garrison's expression had changed. Less hostile, more calculating. Mr. Vorn, here's what's going to happen. We're going to grant you immunity from prosecution for the break-in. In exchange, you're going to cooperate fully with this investigation. You're going to testify in open court when this goes to trial. And you're going to help us find evidence we can actually use. Why would you do that? Because Morrison and his investor friends are bigger fish than a trapper who broke into a land office. We want them. You can help us get them. So we're making a deal. What about Mara? Same deal applies to her. Full immunity, full cooperation. Elias looked at Webb. Webb was nodding, almost smiling. Then yes, we'll cooperate. They questioned Mara that afternoon. 6 more hours of detailed interrogation, this time focusing on the contract negotiation, the bookkeeping, how she'd identified the fraud pattern. She walked them through every calculation, every inconsistency, every red flag she'd spotted in Morrison's records. Then Garrison asked about Chicago. Mrs. Vorn, I've reviewed your background. Your husband was disbarred for falsifying legal documents. Were you involved in that activity? Mara had known this was coming, had prepared for it, but preparation didn't make it easier. I kept books for my husband's law practice. I didn't know initially that he was falsifying documents. When I found out, I stopped participating. But you didn't report him? No. Why not? Because I was afraid. My husband was dangerous. Reporting him would have meant... She stopped, gathered herself. It would have meant consequences I wasn't prepared to face. What kind of consequences? The kind that make a woman flee Chicago and end up in Montana territory. The kind that make her willing to take any job. Anywhere, just to disappear. Garrison studied her. You ran from your husband. Yes. And then he died. Yes. Conveniently. The word hung in the air like an accusation. My husband got drunk, fell, hit his head. The police investigated. They ruled it an accident. If you're implying something else, say it directly. I'm not implying anything. I'm establishing facts. The fact is, my husband died in an accident I had nothing to do with. The fact is, I left Chicago to escape a dangerous situation. The fact is, I came to Montana and built a legitimate life. None of that changes what Morrison did. No, but it establishes that you have experience with fraud and document falsification. I have experience recognizing fraud. That's why I was able to identify Morrison's scheme. You want to prosecute me for skills I learned as a victim? Go ahead. But it won't change what's in those documents. Garrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he closed his folder. I think we're done here. Thank you for your cooperation, Mrs. Vorn. Outside the courthouse, Mara couldn't stop shaking. I thought he was going to arrest me, she said. He was testing you, Webb said. Seeing if you'd crack under pressure. You didn't. That's good. It doesn't feel good. Elias put his arm around her. It's over. You did it. We both did. No, the deposition's over. The trial's still coming. More questions, more interrogation, more people trying to tear us apart. Then we'll face it together, like we've faced everything else. She wanted to believe that. Wanted to feel the confidence in his voice. But all she felt was tired. They stayed in Helena 3 more days while the prosecutors reviewed their testimony and gathered additional evidence. On the 3rd day, Webb came to their boarding house with news. They raided Morrison's house this morning, found a safe full of documents, correspondence with the investors, records of payments, proof of the whole scheme. Everything you suspected, all laid out in Morrison's own handwriting. So they don't need our testimony anymore? Mara asked. They still need it, but now they have corroboration. The case is solid. Webb smiled. You did it. You really did it. Morrison and 6 railroad investors are going to prison because you two refused to let it go. When's the trial? Elias asked. Spring, probably. April or May. The prosecutors want time to build an airtight case, but it's happening, and it's going to stick. That night, they walked through Helena's streets, watching the town settle into evening. Lamps were being lit in windows. Families were sitting down to dinner. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that 2 strangers had just helped bring down a corruption scheme that stretched halfway across the country. You ever think about staying? Elias asked. Down here, I mean, where it's easier, where we're not isolated on a mountain for 6 months out of the year. No, do you? Sometimes, when my leg hurts bad and I'm tired of splitting firewood, and I remember what it was like to be around people. But the mountain's home, the outpost's home, your home. Everything else is just easier, not better. Mara stopped walking, turned to face him. I need to tell you something. Okay. When Garrison was questioning me, when he brought up Thomas and Chicago and everything I ran from, part of me wanted to run again. Just disappear, start over somewhere new where nobody knows my past. But you didn't. No, because for the first time in my life, I have something worth staying for. Someone worth staying for. And I'm terrified I'm going to mess it up somehow. Elias took her hands. You're not going to mess it up. We're going to fight and disagree and drive each other crazy sometimes because we're both stubborn as hell. But you're not going to mess it up. Neither am I. We're just going to be imperfect people trying our best. That's all anyone can do. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's actually pretty complicated, but it's worth the complication. They kissed there on the street, not caring who saw, not caring about anything except the fact that they'd survived another test and come out stronger. The trip back to the mountain took 4 days. They rode slowly, savoring the journey instead of rushing through it. The aspens were losing their leaves now, creating golden carpets on the forest floor. Winter was coming but hadn't arrived yet. They existed in the in-between, the last gasp of fall before the long cold. When they finally crested the ridge and saw the outpost below, Mara felt something settle in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. This rough collection of buildings in the middle of nowhere had become the place she belonged. Home, she said. Home, Elias agreed. Inside, everything was exactly as they'd left it. The ledgers on the desk, the supplies on the shelves, the carved bird on the windowsill. They'd only been gone 2 weeks, but it felt longer. That night, as they lay in bed listening to the wind test the walls, Elias said, "I've been thinking about Webb's offer. Managing Morrison's operations until the investigation's done. I thought you didn't want it." "I didn't, but those camps still need someone running them. And I know the territory, know the trappers. If I don't do it, they'll bring in someone from outside who doesn't know anything." "How long would it take?" "Maybe a year, could be longer if the trial gets delayed. I'd have to travel a lot, be gone for weeks at a time sometimes." Mara was quiet, processing. "You want to do it?" "I think I need to. Not for the money, not for Morrison. For the men in those camps who deserve someone who gives a damn." "Then do it. You'd be alone here, running the outpost, handling everything yourself." "I've done it before." "That was different. That was temporary. This is you doing what's right. I'm not going to stop you from doing that." Oh, she rolled over to face him. "I'll manage. You'll come back when you can. We'll make it work." "You're sure?" "No, I'm terrified. But I'm sure about you. About us. That's enough." He pulled her close, held on tight. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." Winter announced itself with the first real snow in early November. 8 inches overnight, and when Mara woke, the world had gone quiet. Elias had left 3 days earlier for the first camp inspection. Wouldn't be back for another week. She spent the day working through the silence, checking inventory, updating accounts, preparing for the trappers who'd start arriving soon. The loneliness was different now than it had been when she first arrived. Then, she'd been running toward solitude, using it as armor. Now she was just marking time until Elias came home. The trappers started trickling in mid-November. Some she recognized from last year. Others were new, drawn by the outpost's growing reputation for fair dealing. She traded with them all, using the skills Elias had taught her to grade pelts and assess quality. One of them was Peters, the young man from Canyon Ridge who'd nearly starved. He looked better now, filled out, healthy. "Mrs. Vaughan," he said, shaking her hand, "wanted to thank you proper for what you and your husband did. If you hadn't stopped Morrison, I'd probably be dead. You would have found a way." "No, ma'am, I really wouldn't have. I was done, ready to give up. You gave me a reason to keep fighting." He set a package on the counter. "Made you something, as thanks." Inside the package was a pair of snowshoes, beautifully crafted, lightweight, and strong. "Peters, this is too much. It ain't nearly enough, but it's what I can give." He tipped his hat. "You ever need anything, Mrs. Vaughan, you send word. I owe you my life." After he left, Mara stood holding the snowshoes, feeling the weight of what they'd done hit her all over again. They'd saved lives, changed things, made the kind of difference most people only talked about. Elias came home in early December, exhausted and half frozen. Mara had stew waiting and the fire burning hot. He ate like a starving man, then collapsed on the bed without bothering to take off his boots. "How bad?" she asked, pulling the boots off for him. "Bad. 2 camps were undersupplied. One had a roof cave-in that nobody bothered to fix. Another had a foreman who was skimming from the men's wages." He closed his eyes. "I fired the foreman, put in new management. But it's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon. Morrison let everything go to hell. Can you fix it? Maybe, if I have enough time. If the men are willing to trust that things will actually change." He opened his eyes, looked at her. "I missed you. I missed you too. How was it here? Quiet, productive, lonely as hell." "Yeah?" "Yeah." He pulled her down beside him. They lay there in the fading light, too tired to do anything but exist in the same space. "This is going to be hard," Elias said after a while. "Me being gone, you being alone, the distance." "I know. We could stop. I could tell Webb to find someone else." "You could, but you won't. Because you're not the kind of man who walks away from something that matters." Since when do I matter?" "Since always. You just forgot for a while." Christmas came and went, then New Year's. January brought the kind of cold that made last year's winter look gentle. The temperature dropped so low that water froze solid inside the building. Mara spent days just keeping the fire going, feeding it constantly, fighting the cold. Elias made it back for a week in mid-January. They barely left the bed except to eat and stoke the fire. When he had to leave again, the goodbye hurt worse than before. 2 more months, he said, maybe 3. Then the investigation should be wrapped up and I can walk away. I'll be here. You better be. February was the hardest month. Elias was gone for 5 weeks straight, dealing with a crisis at one of the northern camps. Mara ran the outpost alone, trading with trappers, managing accounts, existing in a silence that sometimes felt like it might swallow her whole. She started carving to fill the empty hours. Nothing fancy, just small animals, rabbits, foxes, birds. Her hands remembered the skill from years ago, before Chicago, before Thomas, before she'd learned to make herself small. When Elias finally came home in early March, she'd carved a whole menagerie. He found them lined up on the windowsill beside his bird. You made these? I needed something to do with my hands. He picked up a rabbit, turned it over. The detail was incredible. These are beautiful. They're just wood. No, they're life. You gave them life. That night they sat by the fire, and Elias told her about the camps, the improvements he'd made, the men he'd helped, the systems he'd put in place. His eyes were bright when he talked about it, more alive than she'd seen him in weeks. You like this work, she said. I do. Didn't expect to. But yeah, I like it. Like knowing I'm making a difference, like seeing things get better because I showed up. What happens when the investigation's done? I go back to being a trader, I guess. Run the outpost, work with trappers, live quiet. Is that what you want? He was quiet for a long time. I don't know. A month ago I would have said yes without thinking. Now I'm not sure. Because I've remembered something. Remembered what it feels like to have purpose beyond survival. And I don't know if I can go back to just existing. Mara understood that better than she could say. She'd spent years just existing, first with Thomas, then alone, then hiding at the outpost. But the fight with Morrison, the testimony, the way they'd stood up and made things right, it had woken something in her too. So don't go back, she said. Find a new purpose. Like what? I don't know, but you've got time to figure it out. The letter from Webb arrived in late March, carried by the first supply run since February. The trial was set for April 15th. They'd need to be in Helena by the 10th for final prep. Last time, Elias said, reading the letter. Last trip, last testimony, then it's really done. You sure about that? Has to be. I can't keep living in this limbo, half here, half there, never fully settled anywhere. They left for Helena on April 5th, arriving with 5 days to spare. The town had changed again. More buildings, more people, more of everything. The railroad had arrived in February, and Helena was exploding with growth. Webb met them at the station, looking better than he had in months. Trial's going to be big. National newspapers are covering it. Morrison's already trying to make deals, but the prosecutors aren't interested. What about the investors? Mara asked. 4 of them took plea deals. 2 are fighting it. Should be interesting. The trial started on schedule. The courthouse was packed. Reporters, curious citizens, people who'd been cheated by Morrison and wanted to watch him fall. Elias and Mara sat in the gallery for 3 days, listening to testimony, watching the prosecutors build their case brick by brick. When it was their turn to testify, they told their story one more time. The broken contract, the abandoned camps, the fight to expose the truth. The defense tried to rattle them, tried to find inconsistencies, found none. On the 4th day, Morrison took the stand in his own defense. It was a disaster. He was arrogant, defensive, clearly lying. The prosecutors tore him apart. By the time he stepped down, even his own lawyers looked defeated. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Morrison's face went gray. His lawyers immediately filed for appeal, but everyone knew it was over. Sentencing came a week later, 25 years federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 15. As they walked Morrison out in chains, he looked at Elias and Mara. His eyes were empty, all the fight gone. "Hope you're satisfied," he said. "We are," Elias replied. "Those men you left to die? They're satisfied too." Outside the courthouse, spring sunshine was warm on their faces. The trial was over. The fight was done. They'd won everything they'd fought for and more. "What now?" Mara asked. "Now we go home. For real this time. No more trips to Helena, no more depositions, no more living in pieces." "You're done managing the camps?" "Done as of yesterday. Webb found someone permanent, a former territorial inspector who actually knows what he's doing. I'm free." Free. The word felt strange and wonderful. They stayed in Helena long enough to tie up loose ends, say goodbye to Webb, collect the final payment for Elias's management work. Then they rode north, back toward the mountain, back toward home. The trip took 6 days. They weren't in a hurry. Spring was transforming the landscape, green pushing through brown, flowers appearing in impossible places, the whole world coming back to life after the long death of winter. When they finally saw the outpost, Mara felt something release in her chest. They'd left this place in October as people fighting for survival. They were coming back as people who'd won. Inside, everything was exactly as they'd left it, but it felt different, lighter, somehow. Like a weight had been lifted that they hadn't even known they were carrying. That evening, they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. The carved animals were still lined up on the windowsill inside, her rabbits and foxes and birds keeping Elias's original bird company. "I've been thinking," Elias said, "about purpose, about what comes next. And? The territorial government wants to establish supply stations throughout the high country, places where trappers and settlers can get help in emergencies. They asked if I'd be interested in setting up the network." "That's a big job." "It is. Would mean expanding the outpost, bringing in more staff, being responsible for a whole system instead of just one building. But it's important work, life-saving work." "You want to do it." "I do, but I can't do it alone. I'd need a partner, someone smart, someone good with organization and accounts, someone who's not afraid of hard work." He looked at her. "Someone like you." Mara smiled. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership. Equal say, equal responsibility, equal risk. We build this together or we don't build it at all." "What about the outpost? Our quiet life?" "The outpost becomes headquarters, and quiet—" He laughed. "I don't think we're built for quiet. I think we're built for fighting battles that matter. We just finally found the right battle." She thought about it, about the work ahead, the challenges, the uncertainty, about building something that would help people, that would save lives, that would matter. "Yes," she said. "Let's do it." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They shook hands, formal and serious, the way they had when agreeing to Vorn and Dellens, partners in everything. Summer came to the mountain in a rush of green and warmth. They started the expansion immediately, adding a bunkhouse for staff, expanding the storage, setting up systems for emergency supplies and rapid response. Mara hired 2 assistants to help manage the accounts. Elias brought in experienced guides to train for rescue operations. By August, they had the first 3 supply stations operational. By September, 6 more were under construction. The territorial government was so impressed they offered additional funding to expand faster. In October, exactly 1 year after they'd first left for Helena to fight Morrison, they stood on the porch of the outpost and looked at what they'd built. Buildings where there had been none. Systems where there had been chaos. Hope where there had been desperation. "We did this," Mara said, still not quite believing it. "We did." "Think it'll last?" "I think we'll make it last. As long as we're both alive and stubborn, it'll last." A rider appeared on the trail, one of their guides, coming back from a northern station. He waved, called out that everything was running smooth. Elias waved back, then turned to Mara. "You ever regret it? Any of it? Staying here, fighting Morrison, building this crazy system instead of just living quiet?" "Not for a second. You?" "Not one. Turns out quiet was killing me. This—" He gestured at the expanded outpost, the activity, the purpose. "This is living." That night, they lay in bed listening to the sounds of their small staff settling in for the evening. Voices in the bunkhouse, someone chopping wood for morning, the horses moving in the expanded stable. The outpost wasn't quiet anymore. It was alive. "I love you," Elias said into the darkness. Mara turned to face him. He'd never said it before. Neither had she. They'd shown it in 1,000 ways, but never spoke the actual words. "I love you too," she said. "Took you long enough to say it." "Yeah, well, I'm slow. You know this about me." "I do, but you get there eventually." "Always. As long as you're patient." "I can be patient." "That's a lie." "Yeah, it is." They laughed, held each other, fell asleep tangled together the way they'd learned to do over the long winter. November brought the first snow. Not the killing snow, just a reminder that winter was coming and they'd better be ready. They were. The supply stations were stocked, the systems were in place, the staff was trained. When the real storms hit in December, they were prepared. And when the first emergency call came, a family stranded at the northern pass running out of food, they responded within hours, got them to safety, got them supplied, saved lives that would have been lost if the system hadn't existed. That became the pattern through the winter. Emergencies, responses, saves. Not every call ended well. They lost people sometimes, despite their best efforts, but more lived than died. And that was the point. Spring came again, and with it, recognition. The territorial governor himself came to the outpost to present them with a commendation for establishing the most effective emergency response system in Montana Territory. "You've saved lives," he said, shaking their hands. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. The territory owes you a debt." "We don't want a debt," Elias said. "We just want the system to keep working." "It will. We're allocating permanent funding. This program's going to be a model for the whole territory." After he left, Mara and Elias stood on the porch, looking at the same view they'd been looking at for 2 years now. The mountain hadn't changed. The valley was still harsh and beautiful, but everything else had transformed. "You think your family would be proud?" Mara asked quietly. "Sarah and the girls?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "I think they'd be happy I found a way to keep living, to make the years after them matter. Yeah, I think they'd be proud." "Good. What about your parents? Would they be proud?" "They'd be shocked I ended up in Montana, but yeah, I think they'd be proud. Proud I found the strength to leave Thomas, proud I built something real, proud I stopped running." That summer, on a clear June day, they held a ceremony to officially dedicate the supply station network. Trappers came from all over the territory. Government officials, grateful families, everyone who'd been touched by the system they'd built. Webb gave a speech about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Peters talked about second chances and the power of someone giving a damn. One of the families they'd rescued brought flowers and tears, and Elias and Mara stood together, partners and equals, and accepted the recognition they'd never asked for, but had earned with every hard decision, every cold night, every fight they'd refused to walk away from. As the sun set that evening, after everyone had left and it was just the two of them again, they sat on the porch with coffee and comfortable silence. "I'm happy," Mara said, surprising herself by saying it out loud. "Yeah? Yeah, actually, genuinely happy. Can't remember the last time I felt this way." "Neither can I." Elias took her hand. "We did good, didn't we?" "We did great. So what now? What do we do after happily ever after?" "We keep going, keep building, keep helping, keep living. That's all there is." "That's enough," he said. And it was. The mountain watched them the way it had always watched, indifferent to human struggles, uncaring about triumph or tragedy. But Elias and Mara had learned something the mountain couldn't teach them. They'd learned that strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about finding someone worth standing beside, someone worth fighting for, worth building with, worth loving even when it was hard. They'd come to this place broken and running. They'd stayed and healed and built something that mattered. And in doing so, they'd become the people they'd always had the potential to be. Not perfect, never perfect, still stubborn, still scared sometimes, still carrying scars that would never fully fade, but whole. Finally, impossibly, wonderfully whole. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. Inside, the carved bird caught the last light of day, and on the porch, two people who'd learned to live again held hands and watched the stars come out. The mountain remained, so did they, and that in the end was enough.